Welcome aboard, friends. You're now tuned into Monkey DFIC. We're super excited to share today's story with you. What if every straw hat had Conqueror's Haki? If you enjoy what we do here, the best way to support us is by liking, commenting, and subscribing. We read every comment. Ready? Let's go. Chapter 1, Awakening. The Thousand Sunny rocked violently as massive waves crashed against its hull. What had started as a peaceful afternoon sail had turned into a fight for survival as the straw hats found themselves caught in a bizarre storm that appeared out of nowhere. Hold the rudder steady. Nami shouted over the howling wind, her knuckles white as she gripped the ship's wheel. This isn't a natural storm. The air pressure changed too quickly. Luffy stood at the bow, eyes narrowed against the stinging rain. Something felt wrong, beyond the obvious chaos of the storm. A strange electricity hummed in his veins, different from the familiar rush of his regular Haki. "Frankie. We need a coup to burst." Luffy called back. "No can do, bro." Frankie yelled from below deck, his voice barely audible over the thunder. "Something's jamming the system. It's like the cola tanks are being suppressed by some outside force." Zoro cut through a wave that rose up like a wall of water, his swords flashing despite the darkness. "This feels like we're being hunted," he growled. As if responding to his words, the clouds parted to reveal a massive ship on the horizon, sleek, black, and adorned with strange technology that pulsed with an eerie purple light. "Who the hell are they?" Sanji asked, landing beside Luffy after checking the rear of the ship. "Guys." Usopp's panicked voice came from the crow's nest. "They're launching something. Multiple projectiles headed our way." Dark capsules arced through the air, trailing purple smoke as they descended toward the Sunny. "Everyone take cover." Jinbe bellowed, rushing to the helm to assist Nami. The first capsule crashed onto the deck, cracking open to release a thick, viscous substance that quickly spread across the planks. Where it touched, the wood seemed to drain of color, and a heavy pressure descended. "Don't touch that stuff." Chopper warned, backing away. "It's doing something to the ship." Robin crossed her arms, sprouting limbs to push the approaching liquid away from the most vulnerable crew members. "This substance appears to be absorbing energy from whatever it touches." "Sea stone," Brooke suggested, leaping to higher ground. "Worse," Luffy said, his voice unusually serious. "It's draining Haki." More capsules landed, surrounding them in a tightening circle of the energy-draining substance. The Sunny groaned beneath them, as if the ship itself was being weakened. "We're trapped," Nami realized, watching as the dark ship drew closer. Figures in strange armor stood at its rails, all wearing masks that obscured their faces except for glowing purple eyes. "These must be the Haki hunters," Jinbe said grimly. "I've heard rumors, they're said to drain the will from their victims." Luffy cracked his knuckles, his face set in determination. "Nobody drains anything from my crew." He stepped forward, drawing a deep breath. The familiar surge of Conqueror's Haki built within him, but as he released it, something unexpected happened. Instead of just affecting their attackers, Luffy's Haki seemed to resonate within each of his crew members, igniting something that had lain dormant. Zoro felt it first, a burning sensation that started in his chest and spread outward, different from anything he'd experienced before. His single eye widened as black lightning began to crackle around his swords. "What the?" he started, but was cut short when Sanji suddenly dropped to one knee, golden black flames flickering around his body. "Something's happening," Sanji gasped, staring at his hands as the flames danced across his skin without burning him. One by one, each straw hat felt a surge of power unlike anything they'd experienced before. Nami's hair began to float around her head, charged with electrical energy as storm clouds formed directly above her, separate from the larger storm. Usopp fell backward, his eyes rolling as visions flooded his mind. He could suddenly see the weak points of everything and everyone around him, highlighted as if by a targeting system. Robin's eyes glowed blue as shadowy wings briefly materialized behind her, and nearby objects began to tremble and float. Chopper grew slightly in size even without transforming, a primal roar escaping him that sent nearby birds scattering in terror. Frankie's mechanical parts whirred and glowed with unexpected energy as the cola in his system supercharged, radiating a blue aura. Brooke's soul seemed to partially separate from his skeleton, creating a ghostly double that hummed with spiritual power. Jinbe stood rock-steady as water from the sea rose up around the ship in defiance of gravity, circling him like protective serpents. The purple substance that had been creeping across the deck suddenly retreated, as if burned by the combined energy radiating from the crew. Luffy stared in amazement at his nakama. "You guys, you're all using Conqueror's Haki." "That's impossible," Jinbe said, though the evidence was undeniable. Conqueror's Haki is the rarest form, present in only one in several million people. "Tell that to whatever's happening right now," Zoro replied, staring at the black lightning crackling around his white sword. The hunters on the opposing ship had frozen in apparent shock. Through a megaphone, a voice called out, "Impossible. Confirm readings." Another voice replied, panic evident even at a distance, "Readings confirmed. All targets registering as Class A Conquerors. This has never been recorded." Luffy grinned, his eyes shadowed by his straw hat. "Whoever you guys are, you picked the wrong crew to mess with." He stretched his arm back, coating it in armament Haki. "Gomu Gomu no. Red Hawk." The flaming punch shot toward the enemy ship, but something different happened. The flames burned black and red, and as his fist connected with the hull, the impact sent a visible shockwave through the air. The enemy ship's front section crumpled inward, metal screaming as it tore apart. Alarms blared across the water. "What was that?" Luffy asked, staring at his smoking fist in surprise. "It felt different." "Your Conqueror's Haki infused with your attack," Jinbe explained, awe in his voice. "I've only heard stories of such techniques." The hunters scrambled to regain control of their damaged vessel. "Retreat! Full retreat," the leader shouted. "Contact headquarters, the situation has changed dramatically." As the hunter ship began to withdraw, pulling away into the dissipating storm, the straw hats were left to process what had just happened. The strange energy coursing through them began to fade, leaving them exhausted but exhilarated. "Will someone please explain what the hell just happened?" Nami demanded, watching as the tiny storm cloud above her head finally dissipated. Luffy crossed his arms, unusually thoughtful. "I think I accidentally woke something up in you guys." "Conqueror's Haki," Jinbe said, still disbelieving. "In every single crew member. It defies everything I know about Haki." "I don't get it," Chopper said, shrinking back to his normal size. "What exactly is Conqueror's Haki? I thought only Luffy had it." Luffy nodded. "It's this thing where you can knock people out with your willpower. Rayleigh told me only certain people are born with it." "One in several million," Robin mused. "The statistical improbability of an entire crew possessing this ability is astronomical. Unless..." Jinbe's eyes widened with sudden realization. "There are legends about Haki resonance, when one powerful Conqueror's Haki user can awaken dormant potential in others who are predisposed but haven't manifested it yet." "So you're saying Luffy woke up abilities we already had?" Sanji asked, lighting a cigarette with fingers that still trembled slightly. "It would seem so," Robin said. "Though I've never encountered any historical records of it happening on this scale." "Hang on," Usopp interrupted, pacing nervously. "Are you seriously telling me that I, Usopp, the totally normal human, have the same kind of rare superpower as Luffy? The power that's supposed to mark someone as having the qualities of a king?" "You did just knock out 3 of those hunter guys without touching them," Chopper pointed out excitedly. "I did?" Usopp blinked in surprise. "When you fell backward," Nami confirmed. "You looked up, screamed, and 3 of them just collapsed. Super development." Frankie struck his signature pose, though it lacked some of its usual energy. "But I'm running on empty now. Whatever that power surge was, it drained my cola reserves. We all need rest, Chopper said, slipping into doctor mode as he checked on Brooke, who was slumped against the mast. Our bodies aren't used to channeling that kind of power. We should get moving before those hunters return with reinforcements, Zoro said, sheathing his swords. Agreed, Jinbe said, taking the helm. I know these waters. There's an island not far from here where we can regroup and figure out our next steps. As they sailed away from the battle site, none of them noticed the small drone hovering high above, transmitting everything back to a marine battleship just beyond the horizon. Admiral Kuroshi stood on the deck of his flagship, the Justice Absolute, watching the footage with increasing intensity. His lean frame was wrapped in the standard Marine Admiral uniform, but colored a deep burgundy with black trim. His most striking feature was the scar that ran from his right temple down to his jaw, crossing directly over his right eye, which glowed with an unnatural amber light. Play it again, he commanded, his voice soft but carrying undeniable authority. The young lieutenant hurriedly rewound the footage, showing once more the moment when all the straw hats simultaneously displayed signs of Conqueror's Haki. Impossible, the admiral muttered, though the evidence was right before him. 1 crew. 10 members. 10 Conqueror's Haki users. Sir, should we engage? His first officer asked, hand resting on the hilt of her sword. Admiral Kuroshi continued to watch the screen, his scarred face betraying no emotion. No. This situation requires careful handling. He turned to his communications officer. Send word to Marine Headquarters immediately. Classification level, Supreme. The Straw Hats have become an unprecedented threat. Yes, Admiral. Kuroshi walked to the railing, gazing out across the ocean toward where the Thousand Sunny had disappeared. 10 Conqueror's Haki users, he repeated softly. If they learn to control this power. His right eye flared brighter as memories flooded back, screams, destruction, an island reduced to ash by a single person's unleashed Haki. He clenched his fist, the special C stone-lined glove creaking with the pressure. I will not allow another Haki catastrophe, he vowed. Not while I still draw breath. The Thousand Sunny docked at a small, unassuming island several hours later. Exhaustion had claimed most of the crew, the brief explosion of Haki leaving them drained. Only Luffy seemed relatively unaffected, bouncing around the ship with his usual energy. Come on, guys. Let's explore. Maybe there's meat on this island. Luffy, most of us can barely stand, Nami groaned, leaning against the railing for support. Is this how you feel after using that power all the time? Usopp asked Luffy, sprawled on the deck. Nah, you get used to it, Luffy replied with a grin. The first few times are rough, though. Jinbe, who seemed less affected than the others, pointed toward a trail leading up from the beach. There appears to be a village over that ridge. We should seek lodging and supplies. I'll go check it out, Sanji offered, steadying himself as he stood. Need to restock our provisions anyway. I'll accompany you, Robin said. I'd like to inquire if this island has any historical records. I'm going too. Luffy declared. I smell adventure. And food. Just don't cause trouble, Nami warned. We're all too exhausted to bail you out right now. As the small group made their way toward the village, Zoro approached Luffy with unusual seriousness. Hey, Luffy. That thing that happened back there, you think it'll happen again? Luffy tilted his head thoughtfully. Probably. It felt right somehow, like something that was supposed to happen. But is it safe? Sanji asked. That kind of power. Power's just power, Luffy said with his characteristic simplicity. Depends how you use it. The village that came into view was small but well kept, with thatched roof houses and a few larger stone structures. People moved about their daily business, though many stopped to stare as the pirates entered. Outsiders, a woman whispered to her companion. And look at their flag, those are the Straw Hat Pirates. Unlike the fear this recognition often caused, the villagers seemed merely curious, even respectful. An older man with a long white beard approached them, leaning on a gnarled wooden staff. "Visitors. Welcome to Wellspring Island. I am Elder Mosu." "Yo." Luffy greeted cheerfully. "I'm Monkey D. Luffy, and I'm gonna be king of the pirates." The elder's eyes widened slightly, and he studied Luffy with new interest. "Are you, now?" His gaze shifted to each member of the group, lingering particularly on Robin. "You have the look of people who've recently experienced something transformative." Robin's eyebrows rose. "That's quite perceptive of you, Elder Mosu." The old man chuckled. "When you've lived as long as I have, you recognize the signs. Tell me, did you perhaps experience an awakening of sorts? A power surging through all of you simultaneously?" The pirates exchanged surprised glances. "How did you know that?" Sanji asked suspiciously. Elder Mosu gestured toward a large stone building at the center of the village. "Come. We have much to discuss, and this is not a conversation for open streets." Inside the building, which appeared to be a combination of library and meeting hall, the elder directed them to sit around a large circular table. The walls were lined with ancient books and scrolls, and stone tablets with strange inscriptions were displayed in glass cases. "This island has a unique history," Mosu began, lighting a small oil lamp at the center of the table. "For centuries, we've been keepers of knowledge regarding Haki, particularly its rarest form." "Conqueror's Haki," Robin surmised. "Indeed." The elder retrieved an ancient scroll from a locked cabinet. "What happened to you and your crew is exceedingly rare, but not unprecedented. We call it Haki resonance." He unrolled the scroll, revealing illustrations of figures surrounded by black lightning, not unlike what had enveloped the Straw Hats during their encounter with the Haki hunters. When multiple individuals with the dormant potential for Conqueror's Haki spend extended time together, their energies can become synchronized. Then, under conditions of extreme stress or necessity, a catalyst, typically a person who already actively uses Conqueror's Haki, can trigger awakening in the others. "That's what I did?" Luffy asked, leaning forward to examine the scroll with unusual interest. "It would seem so." Mosu pointed to one particular illustration, showing a central figure with energy radiating outward to others. This phenomenon was first documented during the Void Century, though much of that knowledge has been lost. Robin's eyes sharpened. "The Void Century? This information could be invaluable." "Perhaps," the elder said cautiously, "but it also makes you targets. There are those who believe Conqueror's Haki should be strictly controlled, even eliminated. Like those hunter guys who attacked us," Luffy said. "And likely others by now," Mosu warned. "Word will spread quickly of an entire crew manifesting this power simultaneously. It's unprecedented in modern times. But what does it mean for us?" Sanji asked, lighting a fresh cigarette. "We could barely control it, and afterward, everyone except Luffy was completely drained." The elder nodded. "The initial awakening is always the most difficult. Your bodies and spirits aren't accustomed to channeling such energy. With training, you could learn to use it effectively, but," a young villager burst into the room, breathless and panicked. "Elder! Marine ships approaching. At least 3 battleships. They found us already?" Robin said, alarmed. Mosu's expression grew grave. "You must leave immediately. Take the back exit. There's a path through the forest that will lead you to the eastern shore." "What about you and the village?" Luffy asked, already on his feet. "We've dealt with Marines before. This island is technically under their protection, they won't harm us without cause." The elder reached into his robes and pulled out a small, weathered log pose. "Take this. It's set to an island not marked on any map. There you'll find someone who can help you understand and control these new abilities." "Thank you, old guy," Luffy said, accepting the log pose with a grin. Go now, Mosu urged. And remember, Conqueror's Haki isn't just about dominating others. Its true purpose has been misunderstood for centuries. As they hurried out the back exit, Robin turned back. What is its true purpose, then? The elder smiled mysteriously. To find that answer, you must journey to the island of Will. The log pose will guide you there, but only those with awakened Conqueror's Haki can find their way to its heart. By the time they reached the Thousand Sunny, the rest of the crew had recovered enough to prepare for immediate departure. Jinbe took one look at the approaching marine ships and immediately began barking orders. Frankie, is the coup de burst functional? Got enough cola for one good blast, but that's it. Nami, once we're clear of the island's magnetic field, follow the heading on this log pose, Luffy instructed, handing her the device from Elder Mosu. Nami examined it curiously. This design is ancient. I've never seen markings like these before. No time to figure it out now, Zoro said, pointing to the horizon where a tall figure could be seen standing at the bow of the lead marine vessel. We've got company. Through a telescope, Usopp focused on the distant figure. That's an admiral. I can see the coat. Red with black trim, and he's got some kind of glowing eye. Admiral Kuroshi, Jinbe said grimly. I've heard rumors, he specializes in hunting Haki users, especially those with Conqueror's Haki. Why would an admiral focus on that? Chopper asked. No idea, but he's bad news, Frankie replied. Ready for coup de burst on your command, Luffy. The marine ships were closing fast, and a voice boomed across the water through a den mushy loudspeaker. Straw Hat Pirates. This is Admiral Kuroshi of the Marines. Surrender immediately. You are harboring a power that threatens world stability. Luffy stepped up to the railing, his face set in determination. Hey, glowy eye. We're not surrendering to anyone. My crew and I are going to be free no matter what. The Admiral's response was immediate and unexpected. Instead of threats, his voice took on an almost pleading quality. You don't understand what you're dealing with. Conqueror's Haki en masse can lead to catastrophe. I've seen it destroy entire islands. For a moment, Luffy hesitated, surprised by the sincerity in the Admiral's voice. But his resolve quickly returned. We won't let that happen. We're gonna master this power and use it our way. That's a promise. Naive child, Kuroshi's voice hardened. Then you leave me no choice. The Admiral raised his gloved hand, and the sea between the ships began to churn and rise, forming into massive tentacle-like columns of water. He's manipulating the sea itself. Jinbe exclaimed. That's advanced fishman karate combined with Haki. Everyone hold on. Nami shouted. Frankie, get us out of here. Super coup de burst. Now. The Thousand Sunny's rear engines ignited with explosive force, sending the ship rocketing into the air just as the water tentacles converged on their previous position. They soared over the marine blockade, leaving Admiral Kuroshi staring up at them with his eerie glowing eye. As they flew through the air, something strange happened. The log pose in Nami's hand began to glow with the same resonant energy they had experienced during their awakening, and for a brief moment, each crew member felt a pulse of power. It's responding to us, Robin realized, watching the needle swing decisively toward a direction no regular log pose would indicate. Then that's where we're heading, Luffy decided as the ship began its descent back to the ocean. To the island of Will. The next few days aboard the Thousand Sunny were filled with unexpected developments as each crew member began experiencing sporadic manifestations of their newly awakened Haki. These incidents ranged from merely surprising to downright dangerous. Zoro was meditating on deck when black lightning suddenly erupted from his swords, slicing clean through the mast without him even moving a muscle. It took Frankie hours to repair the damage. Sorry, Zoro muttered, though he looked more intrigued than apologetic. It just happened. Nami created a localized thunderstorm during an argument with Luffy over food rations, actual lightning bolts striking around the ship until Jinbe managed to calm her down. I didn't mean to, she protested as the others huddled under shelter. I was just really angry. Usopp's manifestations were particularly troublesome, as they seemed tied to his tendency to exaggerate. During one of his tall tales, the ocean around them briefly appeared to fill with sea kings exactly as he described them, causing panic until Robin determined they were merely incredibly realistic illusions. So my Haki creates visions? Usopp wondered, alternately terrified and fascinated by the prospect. More like it projects your imagination outward, Robin suggested. Her own manifestations were more subtle. Books in the library would rearrange themselves based on her thoughts, and she occasionally knew answers to questions no one had asked aloud. Sanji discovered his Haki connection when preparing dinner one night. As he focused on creating the perfect dish, the flames of the stove changed from orange to golden black, and the food that emerged not only tasted incredible but seemed to physically strengthen everyone who ate it. Food that feeds the spirit as well as the body, he mused, already planning how to refine this ability. Chopper's manifestations were perhaps the most surprising. His natural ability to communicate with animals seemed amplified 100-fold, as sea creatures began following the ship, responding to his unspoken directions. "They're offering to help us navigate," he explained, blushing beneath his fur at the attention. Frankie approached the situation with his typical inventive enthusiasm, creating a device to measure and potentially harness the energy their Haki was producing. "If I can figure out the wavelength, maybe I can build something to help us control it better." Brook's manifestations were decidedly spooky. His music began affecting the physical world. Playing a sorrowful tune caused actual tears to form on inanimate objects, while his more upbeat songs made the ship itself seem to sail faster and more smoothly. Yo-ho-ho-ho. Soul music takes on a whole new meaning now. Jinbe alone seemed capable of controlling his manifestations, using his years of Haki experience to channel the new power. He demonstrated by creating a sphere of water that hovered above the deck, shifting and flowing according to his will. "The key is understanding that Conqueror's Haki isn't about forcing your will upon others," he explained to the gathered crew. "It's about being so absolutely certain of your path that reality itself makes way." Luffy watched all this with uncharacteristic thoughtfulness. While the others struggled with random manifestations, he had been experimenting deliberately, trying to refine his already considerable Haki abilities. "I think I get what that old guy meant," he announced suddenly during dinner on the third night. "About Conqueror's Haki having a different purpose than people think." All eyes turned to him expectantly. "Everyone talks about it like it's about being strong enough to make others pass out, right? But that's not it. When I use it, it's not about knocking people down. It's about standing so firm in what I believe that nothing can shake me." Jinbe nodded approvingly. "That's very insightful, Luffy. And now all of you have it too," Luffy continued, his face breaking into a broad grin. "Because we all have dreams that can't be shaken. That's why we're Nakama." His words resonated with something in each of them, and for a brief moment, that now familiar energy hummed through the ship, their Haki synchronizing in a way that felt right, natural, even. The moment was broken by Nami's startled exclamation. "The log pose." The ancient device was pulsing with light, the needle spinning rapidly before stopping with absolute certainty. "We're close," Robin said, feeling a strange pull toward whatever destination the log pose indicated. Nami checked her charts, frowning. "There's nothing marked in this area. According to every map, we're heading into open ocean. The old guy said only people with awakened Conqueror's Haki can find this place, right?" Zoro reminded them. "Maybe it's hidden somehow. Or in another dimension." Usopp suggested, eyes wide. "Or underwater." "Or, we'll find out soon enough," Jinbe interrupted calmly. "Based on our current speed, we should reach the coordinates by morning." As night fell, the crew took turns on watch, each lost in thoughts about how their lives had changed in just a few short days. The power awakening within them was both thrilling and terrifying, a responsibility none had asked for but that seemed somehow inevitable in hindsight. Luffy sat alone on the figurehead, staring out at the starlit ocean. The weight of captaincy felt heavier than usual. Whatever awaited them at the Island of Will, he knew instinctively it would change everything, for his crew and perhaps for the world. Meat helps thinking, Sanji said, appearing beside him with a plate of late-night snacks. Luffy grinned, accepting the offering. Thanks, Sanji. The cook leaned against the railing, lighting a cigarette. So, Captain, any brilliant insights about what we're sailing into? Nope. Luffy replied cheerfully, stuffing food into his mouth. But whatever it is, we'll face it together. That's what makes us strong. Sanji smiled despite himself. Luffy's simple confidence had a way of making even the most complicated situations seem manageable. You know, Sanji said after a comfortable silence, I always thought Conqueror's Haki was for people born to be kings or leaders. Never thought someone like me would have it. Why not? Luffy asked, genuinely puzzled. You've got a dream as big as anyone's. All blue, right? Yeah, but, no buts. A dream that big needs a strong will. Luffy punctuated this by slamming his fist into his palm. That's what Conqueror's Haki really is. Having a will that can't be broken. Sanji took a long drag of his cigarette, considering this. Ha! When you put it that way. A shout from the crow's nest interrupted their conversation. Land ho! Dead ahead. Both men turned to peer into the darkness. Sure enough, a dark mass had appeared on the horizon, an island where no island should be. But what truly caught their attention was the massive pillar of light shooting upward from its center, pulsing with the same resonant energy they now recognized as Conqueror's Haki. Looks like we found it, Sanji said, extinguishing his cigarette. Luffy's grin widened, the light reflecting in his eyes. Island of Will, here we come. As the Thousand Sunny approached the mysterious island, the ancient log pose glowed brighter, and each straw hat felt that strange resonance growing stronger within them, calling them forward toward a destiny none could have imagined just days before. Dawn broke over the Island of Will as the Thousand Sunny dropped anchor in a sheltered bay. The island itself was unlike any they had encountered before. Impossibly tall stone spires reached toward the sky, connected by rope bridges and overgrown with lush vegetation. At the center, the pillar of light they had spotted continued to pulse rhythmically, like a heartbeat. This place feels alive, Chopper whispered, his fur standing on end. The entire island is saturated with Haki, Jinbe confirmed, his expression one of awe. I've never sensed anything like it. As they prepared to disembark, a startling discovery was made. The shoreline was littered with shipwrecks, some appearing centuries old, others more recent. All bore signs of violent destruction. Welcoming committee needs work, Frankie commented, eyeing the wrecks nervously. These ships, Robin said, examining the remains, they bear insignia from different eras, world government, ancient kingdoms, even what appears to be a celestial dragon's personal vessel. So everyone wants this place, Zoro concluded, hand resting on his swords. Question is, what happens when they find it? Before anyone could speculate further, movement caught their attention. From within the dense jungle emerged a figure that made them all freeze in disbelief. No way, Nami breathed. It can't be. The figure approaching them was a man they all recognized instantly, Portgas Ace, Luffy's brother who had died at Marineford years before. Ace? Luffy's voice cracked, his body trembling. The figure smiled Ace's familiar smile and raised a hand in greeting. Hey, little brother. Took you long enough to find this place. Luffy launched himself forward, but Jinbe caught him midair. Wait, Luffy. That cannot be Ace. Let me go. Luffy struggled against Jinbe's grip. It's him. It's Ace. No, Robin said firmly. Look closely, everyone. The island is responding to us, to our thoughts, our desires, our will. As she spoke, the figure of Ace flickered slightly, revealing its true nature, a humanoid form composed of the same energy that made up the central pillar of light. Very perceptive, the Ace figure said, its voice still eerily accurate. We appear as that which would most welcome you to our shores. For you, Monkey D. Luffy, that is your lost brother. What are you? Brook asked, stepping forward cautiously. The figure's form shifted, becoming less defined, more ethereal. We are the will of this island, or rather, its guardians. We have existed here since the Void Century, awaiting those worthy to learn our secrets. The Void Century? Robin's eyes widened. Then this island, is one of the last repositories of knowledge from that time, yes. The entity gestured toward the central spire where the Pillar of Light originated. Knowledge the world government has sought to erase for centuries. And that's why it's hidden, Nami realized. Visible only to those with Conqueror's Haki. The entity nodded. Conqueror's Haki was never meant to be rare. During the Void Century, it was a common ability, one cultivated and celebrated. The capacity exists within many, but few environments foster its awakening. So what happened? Sanji asked. Why is it so rare now? Those who seized power after the fall of the Great Kingdom feared those with the will of D and others who naturally manifested Conqueror's Haki. They systematically eliminated bloodlines, suppressed knowledge, and created a world where awakening such abilities became nearly impossible. The entity's form rippled with what seemed like sadness. What you experienced, Haki resonance, was once a sacred ritual, performed to awaken potential in those who would become leaders and protectors. And now we've all got it, Usopp said, still sounding disbelieving. But we can barely control it. That is why you are here, the entity replied. To learn the true nature of Conqueror's Haki and how to wield it responsibly. Then teach us, Luffy said, his initial shock giving way to determination. Make us stronger so we can protect our Nakama and follow our dreams. The entity considered him for a long moment. Very well. But be warned, this training will challenge not just your abilities, but your very understanding of yourselves. Are you prepared for that? The Straw Hats exchanged glances, a silent agreement passing between them. We are, Luffy answered for all of them. Then follow me to the Temple of Will, the entity said, its form solidifying again, this time as a nondescript guide rather than someone from their past. Your training begins now. As they followed the mysterious entity into the jungle, none of them noticed the small bird perched in a nearby tree, its eyes glowing with the same purple light as Admiral Kuroshi's, watching, recording, transmitting. Miles away, aboard the Justice Absolute, the Admiral received the transmission with growing concern. The Island of Will, he murmured. So it wasn't just a legend after all. His first officer approached cautiously. Your orders, Admiral. Kuroshi's glowing eye pulsed brighter as he made his decision. Assemble the Haki suppression unit. We move at dusk. The Admiral turned to gaze out at the horizon, toward the invisible island his specialized eye could somehow perceive. And send word to the 5 elders. Tell them, the forbidden knowledge is at risk of resurfacing. Back on the island, oblivious to the threat gathering against them, the Straw Hats followed their guide deeper into the heart of the Island of Will, toward whatever revelations, and dangers, awaited them there. Chapter 2, Mastery. The Temple of Will wasn't what they expected. Instead of some ancient stone structure, the Straw Hats found themselves standing in a massive clearing surrounded by those impossibly tall spires they'd seen from the shore. The ground beneath their feet hummed with energy, intricate patterns carved into stone platforms that dotted the area. This is it? Zoro asked, looking unimpressed. Thought there'd be more. I dunno, temple stuff. Their guide, who had now taken the form of a tall, androgynous figure with flowing white hair, smiled enigmatically. The temple is not a building, but a place of learning. The entire island serves that purpose. The entity gestured toward the central pillar of light. This energy has sustained our existence for centuries. It is pure, concentrated will, what you would call Conqueror's Haki in its most refined form. Luffy approached the nearest stone platform, instinctively reaching out to touch it. The moment his fingers made contact, the carved patterns lit up with pulsing red energy that matched the rhythm of his heartbeat. Whoa! It's all tingly. One by one, the others followed his example, each touching a different platform. As they did, the platforms illuminated with colors unique to each crew member: Zoro's dark green, Nami's orange gold, Usopp's yellow, Sanji's blue-white, Chopper's pink, Robin's purple, Frankie's electric blue, Brook's ethereal cyan, and Jinbe's deep ocean blue. The platforms recognize your individual signatures, the entity explained. No two manifestations of Conqueror's Haki are identical, each reflects the wielder's soul. This is all fascinating, Robin said, studying her glowing platform, but we came here to learn control. Those manifestations we've been experiencing are becoming increasingly unpredictable. And dangerous, Nami added pointedly, giving Zoro a look that reminded him of the sliced mast incident. Control begins with understanding, the entity replied. You must first comprehend what awakened within you before you can master it. The guide raised a hand, and the central pillar of light pulsed brighter. Suddenly, the air around them filled with translucent images, scenes from history, playing out like ghostly projections. During the Void Century, Haki was understood as the physical manifestation of one's innermost will. What you call Conqueror's Haki was known as sovereign will, not because it allowed one to rule over others, but because it represented sovereignty over oneself. The images showed people from various walks of life, not just warriors or kings, but farmers, artists, healers, and children, all manifesting the telltale black lightning of Conqueror's Haki in different ways. Those who achieved perfect harmony between their actions and their innermost desires could manifest this energy externally. It was considered the highest form of self-actualization. So it's not about being born special? Usopp asked, watching a projection of what appeared to be an ordinary farmer causing seeds to sprout instantly with Conqueror's Haki. The capacity exists in many, though in varying degrees. What determines its awakening is the strength of one's convictions and the clarity of one's purpose. That explains why Luffy awakened at first, Sanji observed. Nobody's more stupidly single-minded about their goals than him. Hey! Luffy protested, before grinning. Actually, yeah, that sounds right. The entity continued, what makes your situation unprecedented is not that you all possess this ability, though that is remarkable, but that your Haki resonates with one another, amplifying and harmonizing. Like how musicians sound better playing together than alone, Brook suggested. Precisely. Your crew has achieved a rare spiritual synchronicity. Your dreams and wills, while different, are compatible, complementary, even. Jinbe stroked his chin thoughtfully. So our training should focus not just on individual mastery, but on how our abilities work in concert. Yes. But first, you must each understand your own unique expression. The entity waved a hand, and the stone platforms rearranged themselves, forming a circle around the clearing. Each of you possesses a different aspect of sovereign will. Discovering that aspect is your first task. And how do we do that? Frankie asked. The guide's form shifted again, this time splitting into 10 identical copies, one standing before each straw hat. By facing yourselves. Without warning, the copies transformed into mirror images of each crew member, but with subtle differences. Their eyes glowed with that same energy, and they carried themselves with absolute confidence. Defeat your reflection to understand your will, the guide said in unison. But be warned, they know your every move, your every thought, your every doubt. Luffy grinned, cracking his knuckles. Sounds fun. Let's do this. His reflection matched his grin, dropping into a fighting stance. Ready when you are, future Pirate King. Before anyone could prepare further, the reflections attacked, and the Straw Hats found themselves in 10 simultaneous battles against the most dangerous opponents possible, themselves. Zoro circled his reflection warily, 3 swords at the ready. The mirror Zoro did the same, moving with identical precision. So I just have to beat myself. Doesn't seem that complicated. Is anything ever that simple with you? His reflection replied with a smirk. They clashed, swords meeting with such force that black lightning erupted around them. Every attack Zoro launched, his reflection countered perfectly. Every strategy he attempted was anticipated. It was like fighting his own shadow. After several minutes of stalemate, Zoro growled in frustration. This is getting nowhere. If you know everything I'm going to do, then you can't win through skill alone, his reflection finished. So what will you do, greatest swordsman? Zoro paused, the title triggering something in his mind. That's it, he murmured. It's not about the swords. He sheathed two of his blades, keeping only Wado Ikemonji drawn, the sword that carried his promise to Kuina. His reflection raised an eyebrow but didn't mirror the action. Interesting choice. My ambition isn't just about being the strongest, Zoro said, more to himself than his opponent. It's about a promise. A bond. Honoring a shared dream. As he spoke, Wado Ikemonji began to glow with an intense green energy. The sword hummed in his hand, resonating with his words. My Haki, it's not just my will. It carries the will of those connected to me. His reflection smiled, not the mocking smirk from before, but something genuine. Now you're understanding. When they clashed again, Zoro moved differently. Instead of trying to overpower or outmaneuver his reflection, he channeled his focus into the connection he felt, to Kuina, to Luffy, to his crew. With each strike, green-black lightning extended from his blade, not wildly as before, but with precision. His final strike didn't cut his reflection, it passed through him, and the mirror Zoro nodded in approval before dissolving into particles of light. Inherited will, Zoro murmured, staring at his sword as the green energy subsided. My Haki carries the dreams of those who came before. Nami faced her reflection with considerably less confidence than Zoro. Unlike him, she'd never considered herself a fighter at her core. I'm not like Luffy or the others, she said, clutching her climax. I'm a navigator, not a conqueror. Her reflection twirled her own staff with a knowing smile. And what does a navigator do, exactly? Charts the course. Reads the weather. Guides the ship. Controls the elements, her reflection added. Predicts the unpredictable. Takes chaos and makes it navigable. Nami hadn't considered it that way before. Her reflection pressed the advantage, swinging her climax to summon storm clouds. Nami countered with her own weather manipulation, creating a swirling defensive barrier of wind. As they fought, controlling competing weather systems, Nami found herself thinking about maps, how they represented her desire to understand and categorize the world, to make the unknown known. My dream isn't just to map the world, she realized aloud. It's to master it. To understand its patterns and flows. Her reflection nodded encouragingly. The weather obeys certain laws, even when it seems chaotic. Just as Haki follows patterns that can be understood and directed. Suddenly, Nami understood. She planted her staff firmly on the ground and closed her eyes, feeling the air currents around her, the pressure systems, the moisture, but now with a new sense that extended beyond physical perception. When she opened her eyes, she saw weather patterns as glowing lines of energy, the very currents of the worlds were made visible. I don't need to create storms, she said with growing excitement. They already exist in potential. I just need to persuade them. Her reflection laughed. Now you're thinking like a conqueror. Instead of forcing a weather pattern into existence as she normally did, Nami simply reached out with her will, suggesting rather than demanding. The response was immediate and extraordinary. The sky above her section of the clearing rearranged itself into a perfect microcosm of weather systems, layers of clouds and winds moving in harmonious patterns. Her reflection dispersed into those same patterns, becoming one with the miniature weather system Nami had orchestrated. Persuasion, not domination, Nami whispered. That's my kind of conquest. Usopp's battle was going poorly. Every boast he made, his reflection countered with a more impressive claim. Every sniper shot he fired, his reflection dodged with irritating ease. This isn't fair. How am I supposed to beat someone who knows all my moves? He complained, taking cover behind a stone column. Perhaps you're asking the wrong question, his reflection called out. Maybe it's not about beating me at all. Then what's it about? You tell me, brave warrior of the sea. The title made Usopp pause. He'd given himself that moniker as a form of aspirational thinking, fake it till you make it. But recently, especially after their adventures in Wano, it had started to feel less like a lie. I've always used stories, Usopp mused, peering around the column at his reflection. Made up tales to make myself seem braver, stronger. And why is that? Because the truth wasn't enough. Because I was scared. Because. And then it hit him. Usopp stepped out from behind the column, lowering his weapon. Because I could see what could be, instead of what was. I could imagine a better, braver version of myself. He looked his reflection directly in the eyes. That's not lying. That's vision. His reflection smiled. The power to see potential. To envision what does not yet exist and make it real through sheer force of will. That's my Haki, Usopp realized. Not illusions, manifestations of possibility. To test his theory, Usopp closed his eyes and focused on a clear image, not an exaggeration or boast, but something he genuinely believed could exist. When he opened his eyes and fired his slingshot, the projectile transformed mid-flight, becoming exactly what he had envisioned, a seed that sprouted into a massive plant that trapped his reflection in rapidly growing vines. Plant Star, Possibility Bloom, he named it on the spot. His reflection laughed as the vines engulfed him. Well done, brave warrior. Your conquest is not of others, but of reality itself. As his reflection dissolved into particles of green light, Usopp stood a little straighter, a new confidence in his stance. His stories weren't lies, they were previews of what could be, if only he had the will to make them real. Sanji's battle was unlike the others. He and his reflection hadn't exchanged a single kick, instead facing off in what appeared to be a cooking contest. Food is your medium, his reflection explained, expertly slicing vegetables. It's how you express your will. Cooking is about nourishing others, Sanji countered, his own knife moving with practiced precision. Not conquering them. Is it, though? His reflection grinned. When someone tastes your food, don't you want it to overwhelm their senses? To conquer their palate so completely they can't imagine eating anything else? Sanji hadn't considered it that way. That's just pride in my craft. It's more than that. Your dream of all blue, a sea where all ingredients can exist together, it's a conquest of boundaries, of limitations. As they continued cooking, Sanji reflected on his journey. From a starving child to Zeph's apprentice to the Straw Hat's cook, his life had been defined by food, by the act of creation that defied the very hunger that had nearly killed him. I cook because. He began, then paused, the realization dawning on him. Because food can transform someone. It can give life, strength, hope. His reflection nodded. Transformation. That's your conquest. Sanji looked down at the dish he was preparing, a simple fish soup, but as he focused his will into it, the broth began to glow with that now familiar golden black energy. The aroma that rose from it was more than appetizing, it was invigorating, carrying with it impressions of the sea, of freedom, of life itself. Conquering hunger, weakness, despair, Sanji murmured. Through nourishment. His reflection tasted the broth and smiled broadly. Exactly. Your Haki doesn't dominate, it uplifts. As his reflection dissolved into motes of golden light, Sanji looked thoughtfully at his creation. He'd always known food was powerful, but this was something else entirely, cuisine that could affect not just the body but the spirit. Wait till those shitty bastards taste this, he said with a grin. Chopper's confrontation took an unexpected turn when his reflection immediately transformed into Monster Point, his most powerful and dangerous form. Wait. Why that form? Chopper asked, backing away nervously. Because it represents your greatest fear, his reflection rumbled. The fear of losing control, of becoming the monster others see when they look at you. The statement cut deep. Despite his years with the Straw Hats, Chopper still carried the scars of being called a monster, of being hunted and feared. I'm not a monster, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. No, his reflection challenged. Then what are you, Tony Chopper? The question forced Chopper to consider everything he was: reindeer, human, doctor, pirate, friend, crewmate. He'd spent so long trying to fit into categories that couldn't possibly contain all that he was. I'm everything I choose to be, he finally answered. Reindeer and human. Doctor and pirate. I don't have to be just one thing. His reflection nodded encouragingly. And your Haki? Chopper thought about his rumble balls, his transformations, the years of research to understand and expand his own capabilities. It's about transcending limitations. Breaking through artificial boundaries. As he spoke, Chopper felt a new transformation beginning, not one of his familiar forms, but something different. His body glowed with pink-black energy, and he shifted into a form he'd never achieved before, still recognizably himself, but with elements of all his transformations harmoniously integrated. Perfect Harmony Point, he named it instinctively. His reflection, still in Monster Point, knelt before him. Your conquest is of false dichotomies, of being forced to choose one identity over another. You refuse the very concept of limitation. When his reflection dissolved, Chopper remained in his new form, marveling at how right it felt, not a compromise between his various aspects, but a perfect integration of them all. Robin's confrontation was quieter than the others. Her reflection simply sat cross-legged on a platform, surrounded by books and artifacts that appeared to be from the Void Century. Knowledge is your domain, her reflection stated. What you seek to conquer is ignorance. Robin approached cautiously. Knowledge has always been my pursuit, yes. But I wouldn't call it conquest. No. Her reflection smiled mysteriously. The world government disagreed enough to destroy your home and hunt you for 20 years. The reminder of O'Hara stung, but Robin maintained her composure. They feared the truth. Precisely. Truth is power. Those who control knowledge control reality itself. Robin considered this, thinking of the poneglyphs, of the hidden history she'd dedicated her life to uncovering. But I don't seek knowledge to control others. Don't you? Her reflection opened a book, revealing text in a language Robin had never seen before, yet somehow, she could understand it. You believe the truth will change the world. That's a form of conquest, perhaps the most profound kind. The realization resonated deeply. Robin had always viewed her pursuit as personal, academic, but in truth, she was challenging the very foundations of the world order established by the world government. My Haki, she said slowly, it's about perceiving truth, even when hidden. Her reflection nodded. Watch. Robin focused on the ancient text before her, and suddenly her vision changed. The symbols began to glow with purple-black energy, and she could see connections between them and other texts she'd studied, a web of meaning that transcended individual languages or codes. This is... Robin whispered, awestruck. The ability to see beyond veils of deception, her reflection confirmed. To comprehend what others have deliberately obscured. Your conquest is of lies themselves. As her reflection dissolved, the text remained, and Robin realized she could read it perfectly, not through translation, but through direct comprehension of the meaning behind the symbols. Her Haki had granted her the ability to perceive truth on a fundamental level. For someone who had spent her life pursuing hidden knowledge, it was the most precious gift imaginable. Frankie's challenge took the form of a building competition, his reflection constructing intricate machinery while Frankie attempted to outdo him. Technology is your medium, his reflection explained, but not your purpose. My purpose? Frankie adjusted his metal arms. I build things to help my crew, to make us stronger. And before that? When you built the sea train? When you designed weapons? Frankie paused. I built to connect islands, to protect what mattered to me. His reflection nodded. Your creations extend your will into the world. They're expressions of your desire to reshape reality according to your vision. This perspective made Frankie reconsider his entire approach to engineering. He'd always seen himself as a craftsman, a technician, but perhaps there was something more philosophical in his work. When I rebuilt myself after that accident, Frankie said thoughtfully, I wasn't just surviving. I was refusing to accept limitations. Deciding that if my human body wasn't enough, I'd transform it. Transformation through invention, his reflection agreed. That's your conquest. As this realization settled, Frankie felt the mechanical parts of his body resonating with blue-black energy. Components began shifting, reorganizing in ways he hadn't designed but that somehow made perfect sense, as if his body was responding directly to his will rather than pre-programmed functions. Super! Frankie exclaimed as his right arm reconfigured into a tool he'd been conceptualizing but hadn't yet built. My Haki lets me bypass the building process. Thought directly into form. His reflection grinned. Your conquest is a physical limitation itself. Matter yields to your vision. As his reflection dispersed, Frankie couldn't wait to explore this new capability, the ability to manifest his inventions through sheer force of will, without the intermediary steps of construction. Wait till Usopp sees this, he said, already imagining the sniper's reaction. Brook's confrontation was perhaps the strangest of all. His reflection appeared not as his current skeletal form, but as his original human self from 50 years prior. How is this possible? Brook asked, stunned to see his human face after so many years. I reflect your true self, his human reflection explained. The soul, not the body. This struck Brook deeply. My true self. You've existed between life and death for decades, his reflection continued. Neither fully in one realm nor the other. This liminal existence is the source of your unique perspective. Brook considered this. His devil fruit had granted him a second life, but at the cost of existing in a state that defied natural law. My music, he said slowly, it's always been my way of bridging worlds. Connecting the living to emotions, memories, experiences. Exactly. Your conquest is not of people or things, but of boundaries themselves, the boundaries between life and death, between past and present, between separate souls. As this understanding dawned, Brook felt his soul resonating with cyan black energy. His music, when he began to play, carried with it echoes of other times, other places, as if he were plucking the strings of reality itself rather than just his instrument. Soul resonance, he named the technique, watching as his music took visible form, notes hanging in the air, affecting the physical world around him. His reflection, now shifting between his human and skeletal forms, nodded in approval. Your conquest is of the very divisions between states of being. Through your will, separate things become connected. As his reflection dispersed into musical notes that joined Brook's melody, the skeleton musician felt a profound sense of wholeness. His condition, neither fully alive nor dead, wasn't a limitation but a gift, allowing him to serve as a bridge between realms that should be separate. Yo-ho-ho-ho. Life and death are just different sections of the same song. Jinbe's confrontation was perhaps the most serene of all. He and his reflection sat in meditation posture, facing each other beside a small pool of water. You understand Haki better than your crewmates, his reflection observed. I've had more years to study it, Jinbe replied modestly. But Conqueror's Haki is new to me as well. Is it? You've always carried yourself with the dignity of one who knows his place in the world. This observation gave Jinbe pause. As a fishman, he'd spent his life navigating prejudice and injustice. As a warlord, then a rebel, then a straw hat, he'd constantly had to redefine his role. I suppose I've always believed in harmony, Jinbi said after a moment's reflection. Between fishmen and humans, between pirates and revolutionaries, between strength and wisdom. Balance, his reflection agreed. Your conquest is not of domination, but of finding equilibrium where others see only conflict. The water in the pool began to rise, forming shapes in the air that moved in perfect harmony with Jinbi's breathing. As he focused on this concept of balance, blue-black energy suffused the water, and he found he could feel every drop, every current, not just physically, but as expressions of will. Water is both the softest thing and the most powerful, Jinbi murmured. It does not fight resistance, it flows around it, wears it down, transforms it. His reflection smiled. And so does your Haki. Not breaking opposition, but incorporating it into a greater harmony. As his reflection dissolved into the water, becoming one with the element Jinbi had always felt closest to, the fishman understood his path forward. His conqueror's Haki would never manifest as domination, it would be the power to find the natural balance in any situation, to guide rather than force. The current that shapes the ocean, he named his approach, feeling more connected than ever to both his fishman heritage and his role among the straw hats. Luffy's confrontation was unlike the others. His reflection didn't fight him or challenge him, it simply matched him move for move, grinning the same wide grin. You already understand your conqueror's Haki better than you think, his reflection said during a brief pause in their sparring. I just know it lets me knock people out if they've got weak spirits, Luffy replied, stretching his arms. That's just one application, the most basic one. His reflection stopped mirroring him and stood straight. Your true conquest has never been about defeating others. Luffy tilted his head curiously. No. Think about your journey. What drives you? Is it the desire to stand above others? To rule? Nah. I just want to be the freest person in the world. That's what the Pirate King is to me. His reflection snapped its fingers. Exactly. Freedom. Your conquest is of limitations, any constraint that would bind you or those you care about. This resonated with Luffy immediately. His entire life had been about refusing to accept boundaries, whether physical, social, or even logical. His rubber body, his outrageous dreams, his willingness to challenge emperors and gods alike, all expressions of his fundamental belief in freedom. So my Haki is the purest expression of liberation, his reflection finished. Not freedom from responsibility, you've always embraced that, but freedom from artificial constraints. As this understanding settled, Luffy felt his Haki changing, not growing stronger, exactly, but more refined. The red-black energy that surrounded him felt less wild, more purposeful. This feels right, Luffy said, examining his hands as the energy flowed around them like water. Like I'm not fighting with my power anymore. His reflection nodded approvingly. Your conquest was never meant to be of people, Luffy. It's of the very concept of impossibility. When his reflection dissolved, Luffy stood alone, feeling lighter somehow. He'd always used Conqueror's Haki instinctively, but now he understood it wasn't just a weapon, it was the purest expression of who he was and what he believed. Freedom, he repeated, grinning widely. I like that. When the straw hats regathered in the central clearing, there was a palpable difference in each of them. They moved with new confidence, their Haki no longer manifesting in unpredictable bursts but flowing around them in controlled auras, each with its distinctive color. The entity, now back in its androgynous guide form, nodded approvingly. You've taken the first step, understanding the nature of your individual wills. This is incredible, Nami said, watching the weather patterns she could now see swirling around her fingers. I feel like I've been navigating blindfolded my whole life until now. Same here, Usopp agreed, demonstrating his new ability by manifesting a small, perfect replica of the Thousand Sunny in his palm. I always thought my imagination was just for making up stories, not this. Sanji approached with a tray of food he prepared using his new understanding. Try these. I infused them with my haki. As each crew member tasted Sanji's creation, they felt immediate rejuvenation, not just physical energy, but a strengthening of their own haki. Food that feeds the spirit, Robin observed. Remarkable. So what's next? Zoro asked the guide, his hand resting on swords that now seemed to hum with contained energy. We understand our haki better, but we've still got a lot to learn about controlling it. And using it together, Jinbe added. You mentioned our abilities work in concert. The entity nodded. The next phase of your training will focus on harmony, learning to combine your unique expressions of will for greater effect. Before the guide could elaborate, a piercing alarm sound cut through the air. The central pillar of light flashed red, and the entity's form flickered with distress. The island's perimeter has been breached, it announced. Multiple intruders approaching from the north shore. The hunters? Chopper asked nervously. No, the entity replied grimly. Marines. Led by one with a will like burning ice. Kuroshi, Jinbe realized. He found us. And he's not alone, Frankie added, using his enhanced vision to scan the northern ridge. Those look like special forces with him. All wearing some kind of tech I've never seen before. The entity's expression grew concerned. They were Haki suppression devices, technology developed using forbidden knowledge stolen from this very island centuries ago. If they capture you while wearing those devices, your newly awakened abilities could be permanently damaged. Then we won't let them catch us, Luffy said firmly. This is our chance to try out our new understanding of Haki in a real fight. Actually, the entity said, this presents an opportunity. The island's interior contains several training grounds designed to help masters refine specific aspects of their Haki. If you split up, you can each reach one of these sites and complete accelerated training while evading capture. Split up. Nami looked uncertain. Is that wise? The Marines will be forced to divide their forces as well, Robin pointed out. And we each need different types of training now that we understand our unique expressions. Exactly, the entity agreed. I can guide each of you to the appropriate training ground. Once you've completed your individual trials, reconvene at the Temple of Resonance on the southern peak. It pointed to the tallest spire visible on the horizon. There you'll learn to harmonize your abilities. Luffy considered this plan, then nodded decisively. All right. Everyone, take this chance to get stronger. Meet at the tall pointy thing by sunset. If anyone gets caught, we'll rescue you. Such confidence, Brook chuckled. Of course. We're the Straw Hats. And now we've all got the Haki of Kings. Luffy's grin was infectious. Let's show these guys what that really means. As they prepared to separate, the entity divided itself into 10 guides once more. One final warning, Admiral Kuroshi possesses unique abilities related to Haki. He can see it, track it, and even suppress it with his glowing eye. Avoid direct confrontation if possible. What's his deal anyway? Sanji asked. Why is he so obsessed with Conqueror's Haki users? That, the entity said gravely, is a question with a tragic answer, one tied to the very history of this island. Perhaps you'll discover it during your training. With that cryptic remark, the Straw Hats split up, each following their guide toward different regions of the island, just as marine forces began to spread out through the jungle in search of them. Admiral Kuroshi stood in a clearing where the Straw Hats had been just minutes before, his glowing amber eye scanning the energy patterns left behind. 10 distinct signatures, he murmured, each already evolving beyond raw potential. Captain Vare, his first officer, examined one of the stone platforms. Sir, these appear to be the same design as the artifacts in the Haki Research Division. Because they came from here, Kuroshi replied. Everything the world government knows about Haki was stolen from this island during the Void Century. Sir. Vare looked surprised at this admission. The Admiral's expression remained impassive. History is written by the victors, Captain. The truth is often less flattering than the official record. He knelt, placing his gloved hand on the ground where Luffy had stood. The Straw Hats have split up, each heading to one of the training grounds. Divide our forces accordingly. Priority is capture, not elimination. Yes, Admiral. And if they resist? Kuroshi's eye pulsed brighter. Use the suppression devices. Level 2 authorization granted. As his forces spread out through the jungle, the Admiral remained in the clearing, staring at the central pillar of light with a complex expression. After all these years, he whispered, I've returned to where it all began. Zoro followed his guide through dense forest, occasionally cutting through undergrowth with his swords. The black lightning that had once erupted unpredictably now flowed smoothly along his blades, enhancing their cutting power without damaging them. Where exactly are we going? He asked. The Forge of Inherited Will, his guide replied. It is where swordsmen of the ancient kingdom came to infuse their weapons with their haki permanently. This caught Zoro's interest immediately. You can do that? Permanently embed haki in a sword? With the right understanding, yes. Your swords already carry the wills of their previous wielders, particularly that white one. Your training will teach you to connect with those inherited wills and harmonize them with your own. The thought of communicating with Wado Ikemonji on such a deep level, perhaps even connecting with Kuina's spirit, drove Zoro forward with renewed determination. They soon arrived at a clearing containing what appeared to be an ancient forge, though no fire burned in its hearth. Instead, the central pit glowed with the same energy as the temple's pillar of light. Place your swords in the forge one by one, his guide instructed. Begin with the one that carries the strongest emotional connection. Zoro unsheathed Wado Ikemonji reverently. As he lowered it into the energy field, images flashed through his mind, Kuina smiling, their childhood duels, their promise. But then the visions continued, showing wielders before her, a lineage of swordsmen and swordswomen stretching back centuries. Every great blade carries the accumulated will of those who wielded it, the guide explained. Your haki allows you to access that legacy. As Zoro connected with these inherited wills, his own green-black energy began to flow into the sword, not overriding the previous imprints but harmonizing with them. Wado Ikemonji began to glow brilliantly. Now, draw it out and perform a single perfect cut, one that expresses everything you are and aspire to be. Zoro lifted the sword, feeling its weight, its history, its meaning. He took a stance that came to him instinctively, one he'd never practiced but that felt absolutely right. Single sword style, inherited legacy. The cut he performed seemed deceptively simple, but the green-black energy that erupted from the blade split the air itself, creating a perfect arc that extended far beyond the sword's physical reach. Trees in the distance were cut cleanly despite being hundreds of yards away. Whoa, Zoro breathed, staring at the sword with new respect. The range of your will is limited only by your clarity of purpose, the guide explained. Continue with your other blades. As Zoro worked through this process with Kitetsu and Enma, he began to understand swordsmanship on a level he'd never imagined, not as techniques to be mastered, but as dialogues between wielder and weapon, between present and past, between individual will and collective legacy. He was so absorbed in his training that he almost missed the approaching footsteps. Almost. Company, he murmured, sheathing his newly empowered swords. Four Marines in specialized gear emerged from the tree line, each wearing strange gauntlets that pulsed with purple light. Target located, one reported into a transponder snail. Roronoa Zoro at the forge. Surrender peacefully, another ordered, raising his gauntlet. These haki suppressors can shut down your abilities instantly. Zoro smiled coldly. Can they now? Let's test that theory. He drew all three swords, now glowing with harmonized energy, and the Marines activated their devices, but something unexpected happened. Instead of suppressing Zoro's haki, the devices sparked and malfunctioned. What's happening? One Marine demanded, shaking his sputtering gauntlet. Your technology is designed to suppress individual will, Zoro's guide explained, watching from nearby. But his swords now carry multiple harmonized wills from across time. Your devices cannot target them all simultaneously. Zoro hadn't fully understood the explanation, but he understood the advantage. Three-sword style, inherited dragon twister. The attack that erupted from his swords carried traces of every previous wielder's spirit, multiplying its power exponentially. The Marines were swept away by a tornado of green-black energy, their suppression devices shattering under the pressure. As the dust settled, Zoro sheathed his swords with a new appreciation for what they truly represented. Not just tools, he murmured, but legacies. His guide nodded approvingly. You've completed the first phase of your training. Now we must hurry to the Temple of Resonance before more Marines arrive. As they left the forge, Zoro glanced back at the Marines, who lay unconscious but alive. So that's why Kuroshi wants to suppress Conqueror's Haki. He fears its potential. His fears are not entirely unfounded, the guide replied cryptically. Power without understanding can indeed lead to disaster. That is why this training is so crucial. Nami's training ground turned out to be a peculiar structure atop one of the stone spires, a circular platform open to the sky, surrounded by what appeared to be ancient weather instruments. The Weather Weaver's Sanctum, her guide announced. Here, those with your particular affinity learn to read and influence weather patterns on a global scale. Global scale? Nami's eyes widened. That's possible. With sufficient mastery, yes. Weather systems are all connected, like a giant conversation between different parts of the world. Your Haki allows you to join that conversation. The training began immediately, with Nami learning to perceive weather patterns far beyond her immediate vicinity. She could sense storms brewing hundreds of miles away, pressure systems shifting across entire regions, even the minute changes in temperature that preceded major weather events. This is incredible, she breathed, watching as her orange-gold Haki extended upward, connecting with cloud formations and air currents. It's like having a living weather map inside my head. Weather manipulation through Haki is not about forcing change, her guide explained, but about making suggestions that the natural systems find compelling. Nami thought of her Climatact, how she'd always used it to create localized effects through scientific principles. So instead of creating artificial weather, I'm nudging what's already there to behave differently. Precisely. Less taxing on your energy, and potentially far more powerful. As Nami practiced this new approach, creating subtle shifts in the atmosphere that cascaded into larger changes, she failed to notice the Marines approaching until they were nearly upon her. Freeze! Cat burglar Nami. 3 Marines in the specialized gear had reached her platform, their Haki suppression devices already activated and pointed in her direction. Nami's first instinct was to reach for her Climatact, but her guide shook its head. Use your new understanding. What do you see when you look at them? Following this prompt, Nami focused her perception. Around each Marine, she could see their personal atmospheric conditions, the heat of their bodies, the moisture in their breath, the tiny electrical impulses in their nervous systems. Their bodies are just smaller weather systems, she realized. Exactly. Apply the same principles. Instead of creating a thundercloud as she normally would, Nami simply suggested a change in the electrical potential around the Marines. The effect was immediate, static electricity built up around them, making their hair stand on end and causing their equipment to malfunction. What's happening? One demanded, shaking his device as it sparked and shut down. Nami didn't stop there. With delicate movements of her fingers, she created minute pressure differences around each Marine, generating localized wind currents that lifted them off their feet and spun them helplessly in the air. Weather suggestion, localized cyclone, she named the technique, watching with satisfaction as the Marines were gently but firmly deposited in a heap at the edge of the platform. Most impressive, her guide commented. You've understood the core principle quickly. I've always studied weather, Nami replied, already experimenting with other subtle atmospheric changes. But I never imagined I could work with it this directly. As they prepared to depart for the Temple of Resonance, Nami looked out across the island, perceiving the weather patterns around each of her crewmates. She could feel Sanji's heat signatures, Zoro's pressure disruptions, Luffy's extraordinary atmospheric influence. "We're all connected," she murmured. "Just like the weather systems." Her guide smiled. "Now you're understanding the true nature of Haki resonance." Usopp's training took place in a serene grotto filled with plants and animals unlike any he'd seen before, species that seemed to blend characteristics of multiple organisms in harmonious ways. "The Visionary's Garden," his guide explained. "Here, those with your gift learn to manifest possibilities into reality. So I really can make my, creative stories come true?" Usopp asked, torn between excitement and trepidation. "Within limits. Your Haki allows you to perceive potential paths of evolution and development, then nudge reality toward those possibilities. But the potential must exist authentically, you cannot manifest the truly impossible." This distinction was crucial. Usopp realized his most outlandish tales had always contained kernels of truth, exaggerated but rooted in real potential. His training began with simple exercises, envisioning how plants might grow, then using his Haki to encourage that growth along his visualized path. A seed would sprout according to his mental image, becoming exactly the plant he foresaw. "This is actually incredibly practical," Usopp noted, creating a series of useful plants, one with natural adhesive properties, another with fibers perfect for his slingshot ammunition. "The most powerful abilities often are," his guide agreed. "Your particular gift has tremendous utility beyond combat." As Usopp's confidence grew, he attempted more complex manifestations, combining elements of different plants to create hybrids, accelerating growth processes that would normally take years, even influencing the behavior of small animals in the grotto. He was in the middle of manifesting a particularly complex plant-animal hybrid when 5 Marines burst into the grotto, Haki suppressors at the ready. Target acquired. "God Usopp, surrender immediately." For once, Usopp didn't panic. Instead, he looked at the Marines with his new perception, seeing not just their physical forms but their potential, their strengths, weaknesses, and the probable outcomes of various actions. "You guys picked the wrong sniper to mess with today," he said with newfound confidence. Before the Marines could activate their devices, Usopp had already fired a seemingly normal seed toward the center of their group. Upon impact, it instantly grew into a massive plant with tentacle-like vines that wrapped around each Marine with unnatural precision. Special attack, manifested binding bloom. The Marines struggled against the plant's grip, but Usopp had specifically visualized it to counter their exact physical capabilities. "How is he doing this?" one Marine shouted as the vines tightened. "The suppressor isn't working." "Because I'm not forcing anything to happen," Usopp explained, surprising himself with his calm. "I'm just helping what could naturally occur to happen a little faster." He approached the captured Marines, examining their equipment with interest. "Now, let's see about these devices you're using." With his enhanced perception, Usopp could see the potential flaws in the suppressor's design. He tapped each one precisely, causing them to short-circuit and power down. "You know," he said conversationally to his captives, "I could tell you about the time I defeated 50 specialized Marine units with just a rubber band and a paperclip, but..." He grinned, "Now I could probably actually do that." His guide nodded approvingly. "You've grasped the essence of your ability quickly. Shall we proceed to the Temple of Resonance?" As they left the grotto, leaving the Marines securely bound by the rapidly growing plant, Usopp reflected on how different this confidence felt from his usual bravado. This wasn't about pretending to be brave, it was about truly seeing his own potential and believing in it completely. "I wonder if this is how Luffy feels all the time," he mused. Sanji's training location was, appropriately, a vast ancient kitchen carved into one of the island's caves. Unlike modern kitchens, this one featured cooking stations that channeled the same energy as the central pillar of light. "The Nourisher's Sanctum," his guide announced. "Where those with your gift learned to create sustenance that fed both body and spirit." Sanji ran his hands reverently over the stone countertops, feeling the history embedded in them. Chefs who used Haki in their cooking. More than that. They understood that nourishment is one of the most fundamental forms of strength. An army's power, a kingdom's resilience, all begin with how its people are fed. This resonated deeply with Sanji's own philosophy. From his childhood starvation to Zeph's sacrifice to his time with the Straw Hats, food had always been about more than mere sustenance to him. His training began with learning to perceive the true nature of ingredients, not just their flavors and nutritional properties, but their energy, their potential to strengthen different aspects of body and spirit. Each ingredient carries specific qualities, his guide explained. Some fortify physical endurance, others mental clarity, others emotional resilience. Your Haki allows you to identify these properties and enhance them through your preparation. Sanji experimented enthusiastically, creating dishes that glowed with his golden black energy. When he tasted them himself, he could feel specific effects: a soup that instantly cleared his mind, a grilled fish that made his physical fatigue vanish, a dessert that filled him with calm determination. "This is revolutionary," he murmured, already planning menus specifically tailored to each crewmate's needs and fighting style. Food prepared with this understanding was once a cornerstone of the ancient kingdom's strength, his guide revealed. Not through domination, but through nourishment of potential. As Sanji prepared a particularly complex dish, one designed to temporarily enhance Haki manifestation itself, his concentration was broken by the arrival of 6 Marines. "Black Leg Sanji," their leader called out. "By order of Admiral Kuroshi, you are to be taken into custody." Sanji calmly continued his preparation, not even looking up. "You're interrupting a chef at work. That's poor manners." The Marines activated their suppression devices, but Sanji had already infused the entire kitchen with his Haki through the process of cooking. The devices fizzled ineffectively. "What's happening?" one Marine demanded. "The suppressors aren't working. Your technology targets concentrated Haki," Sanji's guide explained from nearby. "His is diffused through everything in this space, the ingredients, the air, even the steam from his cooking." Sanji finally looked up from his work, his expression serene but dangerous. "Would you like to sample my latest creation? I call it, Conqueror de Marine Impoli, crushed rude marines." Before they could respond, Sanji had already moved. His legs, wreathed in flames that burned golden black, delivered precise kicks that seemed to transfer energy rather than just physical force. Each Marine that was struck immediately collapsed, not from pain or injury, but from a sudden overwhelming drowsiness. "What did you do to us?" the leader slurred before falling unconscious. "Food isn't the only way to affect someone's physical state," Sanji explained, straightening his tie. "My kicks just adjusted your internal energy balance toward sleep rather than wakefulness." His guide nodded approvingly. "The body is a system of energies that can be influenced in many ways. You've grasped this concept quickly." As they prepared to leave for the Temple of Resonance, Sanji took a moment to package some of the special dishes he'd prepared. "For my crewmates," he explained. "Each tailored to their specific needs for the challenges ahead." "Your understanding of nourishment extends beyond the physical," his guide observed. "That is the true mark of mastery." Sanji smiled, thinking of his friends, his nakama. "That's what it means to be a chef, to truly understand what those you cook for need, sometimes before they know it themselves." The other Straw Hats underwent similarly transformative training experiences across the island. Chopper, in the Healer's Sanctuary, learned to use his Haki to perceive the life force of all living things and influence their natural healing processes, an ability that complemented his medical knowledge perfectly. Robin discovered in the Chronicler's archive that her Haki allowed her to perceive echoes of past events within objects and places, a form of psychometry that would prove invaluable in her quest to uncover the Void Century's secrets. Frankie, in the Innovator's Workshop, refined his ability to manifest mechanical concepts directly through his Haki, creating technology that bridged the gap between science and spirit. Brook, in the Harmonic Chamber, learned to use his music as a conduit for his Haki, creating sounds that could influence emotions, heal injuries, and even temporarily bridge the gap between the living and the dead. Jinbi, at the Tide Master's pool, perfected his ability to sense and influence currents of all kinds, not just water, but the currents of conflict and harmony that flowed between people and nations. And Luffy, in the Freedom Fighters Dojo, honed his understanding of liberation haki, learning to share his inherent sense of freedom with others and break constraints not just for himself but for those around him. As the day progressed, each Straw Hat mastered foundational aspects of their unique haki expression, defeating marine squads with growing confidence and control. The scattered battles across the island demonstrated their rapid growth, with each victory requiring less effort than the last as they integrated their new understanding into their existing fighting styles. But as sunset approached and they began making their way toward the Temple of Resonance, a disturbing discovery was made. Luffy arrived at the Temple of Resonance first, a massive structure atop the tallest spire, open to the sky with a circular platform surrounded by 10 pillars. The central pillar of light from the clearing below extended upward, passing through the center of this platform. "This place feels important," he observed to his guide. "It is. The Temple of Resonance is where sovereign will users learn to harmonize their abilities, to create effects far greater than any individual could achieve alone." As the other Straw Hats began to arrive one by one, they shared their experiences excitedly, each demonstrating new techniques and understandings. "Where's Chopper?" Luffy suddenly asked, noticing their doctor was the only one missing as the sky darkened toward evening. Concern quickly spread through the group. Transponder snails weren't working properly on the island due to the ambient haki energy, so they had no way to communicate with their missing nakama. "I can sense everyone's weather patterns across the island," Nami said, closing her eyes to concentrate. "But I'm not picking up Chopper's signature anywhere." "I fear he may have been captured," Jinbi said gravely. "Several of us encountered marine squads, but Admiral Kuroshi himself has yet to appear." "If they've taken Chopper, where would they hold him?" Sanji asked. Robin's eyes widened with sudden understanding. "The marine ship. They'd need a secure location with their equipment. If the island interferes with haki suppression technology, they'd want him somewhere their devices function reliably." "Then we're getting him back," Luffy declared, his haki flaring red-black around him. "No one takes our nakama." Before they could formulate a plan, their guides merged back into a single entity, its expression troubled. "I have confirmed your friend's location. He is indeed aboard the marine vessel anchored on the north shore. But there is something else you should know." The entity waved a hand, and an image appeared in the air before them, a projection of what appeared to be a laboratory aboard the marine ship. Chopper was restrained on a table, surrounded by equipment. Beside him, other prisoners were visible, people of various races and ages, all with vacant expressions and dull eyes. "What's wrong with those people?" Brook asked, disturbed by their lifeless appearance. "Their haki has been extracted," the entity explained solemnly. "This is what the haki hunters and now Admiral Kuroshi have been doing, capturing those with Conqueror's haki and draining it from them using modified versions of this island's ancient technology." "Extracting haki?" Zoro's expression darkened. "Is that even possible?" "It should not be. Haki is an expression of one's soul, inseparable from one's being. But they have found a way to draw it out, leaving the victim alive but diminished. A shell of their former self." This revelation sent ripples of horror and anger through the crew. "They're planning to do that to Chopper?" Usopp asked, his voice shaking. "I believe so. The process requires time to prepare, which gives us a window for rescue. But you should be aware, this explains Admiral Kuroshi's obsession. He is collecting Conqueror's haki, not merely suppressing it." "But why?" Nami asked. "What could he possibly want with stolen haki?" "That," the entity said gravely, "is what truly concerns me. The last time someone amassed large quantities of extracted haki. It hesitated. It resulted in catastrophe. An entire civilization was lost." "The Void Century," Robin whispered. "This is connected to the fall of the ancient kingdom, isn't it?" The entity nodded. History is repeating itself. We must act quickly, not just to save your friend, but to prevent a disaster that could affect the entire world. Luffy's expression hardened with resolve. Then we'll do both. First we save Chopper, then we stop whatever this glowy-eye admiral is planning. But how? Frankie asked. If they've got Haki suppression tech on that ship, we can't just charge in. Actually, Sanji interjected, I think we can. During my training, I created something that might help. He opened the packages he'd brought, revealing the specially prepared food. Each dish is designed to temporarily boost your natural Haki resistance. It won't make you immune to their suppressors, but it should give us a fighting chance. And I learned something about those devices, Usopp added. They have a design flaw. They're calibrated to suppress Haki at its normal frequency, but if we can modulate our output, change the wavelength of our Haki, they become less effective. I can help with that, Brook offered. My music can influence Haki vibrations. If I play while we attack, it should provide some protection. As the Straw Hats began formulating their rescue plan, combining their new abilities in creative ways, a new confidence filled the air around them. This wasn't just about getting stronger individually, it was about becoming something greater than the sum of their parts. Before you depart, the entity said, there is one ritual traditionally performed in this temple that might prove useful. It won't complete your training, but it will help you act in concert, a temporary Haki resonance that will multiply your individual strengths. Let's do it, Luffy decided immediately. Whatever helps us save Chopper. The entity instructed them to stand at specific positions around the circular platform, each aligned with one of the 10 pillars. As they took their places, the pillars began to glow with colors matching their individual Haki signatures. Focus on your connections to one another, the guide instructed. Not just as crewmates, but as carriers of complementary wills. As they concentrated, lines of energy began to form between them, creating a web of light that pulsed in perfect harmony. The central pillar of light intensified, and each Straw Hat felt their awareness expanding to include aspects of their Nakama's perceptions. Luffy could sense the weather as Nami did. Zoro could perceive truth as Robin did. Nami could envision possibilities as Usopp did. Usopp could feel balance as Jinbe did. These shared perceptions flowed between them, creating a collective consciousness that maintained their individuality while adding new dimensions to their understanding. This is incredible, Robin breathed, experiencing Luffy's inherent sense of freedom as if it were her own. Super connection. Frankie agreed, feeling Sanji's nurturing energy flowing through his mechanical parts. This temporary resonance will fade, the entity warned, but the pathways created will remain. With practice, you can re-establish this connection at will. Now go, save your friend and stop what threatens to become a tragedy beyond imagining. As the Straw Hats left the temple, their Haki flowing around and between them in harmonious patterns, the entity watched with a mixture of hope and concern. The wheel of history turns, it murmured. Let us pray it finds a different path this time. Admiral Kuroshi stood on the deck of his ship, staring at the island of Will with his glowing amber eye. The extraction equipment had been set up in the laboratory below decks, with the small reindeer securely restrained and prepared for the procedure. Sir, Captain Vare approached, the extraction technicians report they're ready to begin with the specimen. Not yet, Kuroshi replied, his voice distant. I want all 10 of them. This one will serve as bait. With respect, Admiral, our intelligence suggests the Straw Hats are already planning a rescue attempt. Shouldn't we begin the extraction immediately? Kuroshi turned to face his first officer, his expression unreadable. Captain, do you know why I hunt those with Conqueror's Haki? The official mandate states they represent a destabilizing influence on world order, sir. A convenient half-truth. Kuroshi removed his glove, revealing a hand covered in burn-like scars. 20 years ago, I witnessed an entire island destroyed by a single person's unleashed Conqueror's Haki. My home, my family, everyone I knew, gone in an instant when a man with power he couldn't control lost himself to rage. Vere's eyes widened. I didn't know, sir. Few do. The world government classified the incident. But I learned something that day. Conqueror's Haki in its raw form is as dangerous as any ancient weapon. Kuroshi replaced his glove carefully. What we're doing isn't just about maintaining order, Captain. It's about preventing apocalypse. Then the extraction process removes the danger while preserving the power for constructive use. Kuroshi's glowing eye pulsed brighter. The world government's Haki enhancement initiative will ensure that power serves justice rather than chaos. Before Vere could respond, alarms blared across the ship. Admiral. Multiple targets approaching from the south shore. It's the Straw Hats. Kuroshi smiled thinly. Right on schedule. Activate all suppression devices. Level 3 authorization code, Amber Justice. As Marine forces rushed to battle stations, the Admiral remained calm, watching the approaching pirates through his specialized eye. Interesting, he murmured. Their Haki signatures are harmonizing. The Straw Hats approached the Marine vessel with unprecedented coordination. Thanks to the resonance ritual and Sanji's specialized food, they moved as a single unit despite maintaining their individual fighting styles. Luffy led the charge, his red-black Haki extending outward to break constraints, not just physical ones, but the very rules of engagement the Marines relied upon. Remember the plan, he called to his crew. Sanji, Robin, and Jinbe get Chopper. The rest of us keep their attention. As Marine forces deployed to meet them, the Straw Hats unleashed their newly refined abilities in concert. Brook played a haunting melody that modulated their Haki frequencies, making the suppression devices struggle to lock onto them. Usopp fired seeds that instantly grew into strategic cover and obstacles, his vision power allowing him to anticipate the Marines' movements before they occurred. Nami created localized weather effects that disrupted the Marines' formations while boosting her crewmates' mobility, tailwinds for Sanji, fog cover for Robin, rain to strengthen Jinbe. Zoro's swords, now permanently infused with harmonized Haki, cut through the Marines' specialized weapons as if they were paper, his inherited will techniques disabling whole squads without killing them. Frankie incorporated his Haki directly into his mechanical systems, creating weapons and defenses that adapted in real time to the Marines' tactics. And Luffy. Luffy was everywhere at once, his rubber body enhanced by his liberation Haki to move with impossible speed and flexibility. Each punch he landed seemed to free the recipient from something, fear, blind obedience, limiting beliefs. These aren't the same pirates we faced earlier, a Marine officer observed in disbelief as his squad was systematically disabled. It's like they've undergone years of training in a single day. Admiral Kuroshi watched the battle unfold from the ship's bridge, his glowing eye analyzing the Straw Hats' movements with clinical precision. They've achieved preliminary resonance, he noted to Captain Vere. Fascinating. Even I didn't master that until my third year of specialized training. Should we deploy the elite suppression squad, sir? No. Let them come. Kuroshi's hand went to the hilt of a sword he carried, a blade with strange technological modifications built into its guard. I'll handle this personally. Below decks, the extraction team continued preparations, unaware of the battle raging above. Chopper, weakened but conscious, watched them calibrate their equipment with growing dread. Why are you doing this? He asked the lead technician, a cold-eyed woman in a white coat. Don't you see what's happened to those other people? He nodded toward the vacant-eyed prisoners in nearby cells, former Conqueror's Haki users who had been drained of their will. Necessary sacrifices for the greater good, she replied without looking up from her work. Uncontrolled Conqueror's Haki is too dangerous to be allowed to exist in the general population. But you're not destroying it, you're taking it for yourselves, Chopper argued. How is that any safer? This gave the technician pause. We're not using it. We're containing it for study and controlled application. Is that what they told you? Chopper pressed, noticing her momentary doubt. Look at those people. Really look at them. That's not just power that was taken, it's their very essence. The technician glanced at the prisoners, a flicker of discomfort crossing her face before she hardened her expression. The Admiral knows what he's doing. He's seen firsthand the destruction unleashed Haki can cause. Before Chopper could respond, the laboratory door burst open. Sanji entered with a flying kick that sent two guards crashing into the wall, followed by Robin crossing her arms to sprout limbs that disabled the remaining security personnel. Jinbe was the last to enter, his calm presence belying the force with which he'd cleared their path to the laboratory. Chopper. Sanji rushed to the restraint table. Are you hurt? I'm okay, Chopper assured him as Robin carefully removed his restraints. But these other prisoners, they've had their Haki extracted. We have to help them too. Jinbe examined the vacant-eyed captives with grave concern. This is worse than we feared. Not just suppression, but complete extraction. The lead technician backed away, reaching for an alarm button, but Sanji moved faster, appearing beside her in an instant. I don't hit women, he said calmly, but I don't need to. He placed a plate of food before her. Eat this. What? I'm not, it's your choice. But I think you need clarity right now. Something in his tone made her hesitate. After a moment's consideration, she took a small bite of the offered food, and her eyes immediately widened as Sanji's truth-revealing Haki temporarily cleared her mind of conditioning and doubt. They lied to us, she whispered, looking at the extraction equipment with horror. They're not containing it, they're weaponizing it. What do you mean? Robin asked sharply. Project Sovereign Dawn, the technician explained, her professional demeanor crumbling. They're collecting Conqueror's Haki to create a weapon that can suppress free will across entire regions. Admiral Kuroshi believes it's necessary to prevent another catastrophe like the one that destroyed his home island. By creating a bigger catastrophe, Jinbe observed grimly. This is madness. Sanji turned to the prisoners. Can the extraction be reversed? Can we restore what was taken from them? The technician shook her head helplessly. I don't know. The research has all been focused on extraction, not restoration. Chopper, now free, examined the equipment with his medical eye enhanced by his new Haki perception. Maybe. I think I see how this works. It's not destroying their Haki, just disconnecting it from their consciousness. Can you reverse it? Robin asked. I can try, Chopper said, his expression determined as he shifted into his new perfect harmony form. But first, we need to secure that extracted Haki. Where is it stored? The technician pointed to a sealed chamber at the back of the laboratory. In those amber containers. Each one holds the concentrated will of a single person. Jinbe moved to the chamber, carefully opening it to reveal dozens of glowing amber vials. So many victims. We'll need to take these with us, Robin decided. If they can be restored to their owners, we must try. If not, they cannot be allowed to become weapons. As they began carefully collecting the amber vials, a tremendous crash shook the entire ship. Sounds like Luffy and the others are keeping everyone busy, Sanji observed with a grin. Let's hurry. On the main deck, the battle had escalated dramatically. Despite the Marine's specialized equipment, the Straw Hats' harmonized Haki allowed them to maintain the upper hand, until Admiral Kuroshi finally entered the fray. Enough of this, he announced, stepping onto the deck with his modified sword drawn. The Admiral's presence was immediately felt by all, a crushing pressure that made even the Straw Hats momentarily hesitate. His glowing amber eye scanned them methodically, its light pulsing in rhythm with the sword in his hand. Impressive display, he acknowledged. You've learned much in a short time. But your understanding is incomplete, dangerous. Says the guy collecting people's Haki like trophies, Zoro retorted, his three swords at the ready. Kuroshi's expression darkened. You know nothing of the dangers you're playing with, Roronoa. Conqueror's Haki unbound destroyed my entire island in seconds. Everyone I ever loved, gone in an instant when one man lost control. So your answer is to steal it from others? Luffy demanded, his voice uncharacteristically serious. To take people's wills away. To ensure it serves order rather than chaos, Kuroshi corrected. The Sovereign Dawn Project will create a world where such powers can never again cause mass destruction. By becoming the only ones who can use it, Robin said as she emerged from below decks with Sanji, Jinbe, and a recovered chopper. That's not protection, it's domination. Kuroshi's attention shifted to the amber vials they carried. Those are government property. The culmination of decades of research. They're people's souls, Chopper countered angrily. You can't own someone else's will. The Admiral's patience visibly thinned. You children play with forces you don't comprehend. Let me demonstrate what true mastery of Haki looks like. He raised his sword, and its technological components began to glow with the same amber light as his eye. As he channeled his own Haki into the blade, it seemed to draw additional energy from somewhere else, a familiar resonance that made the Straw Hats tense with recognition. He's using stored Haki from those vials, Jinbe realized aloud. Amplifying his own power with what he's stolen from others. The resulting attack was unlike anything they'd faced before. A wave of amber energy erupted from Kuroshi's sword, moving across the deck with such speed that even Luffy barely had time to shout a warning. Where it touched, Marines and pirates alike found themselves momentarily paralyzed, their own Haki suppressed completely. Only Brook's hasty melody, modulating their Haki frequency, prevented the Straw Hats from being completely immobilized. That was merely a demonstration, Kuroshi stated calmly. The next will not be so gentle. Surrender the vials and submit to extraction, or I will be forced to take more permanent measures. Luffy stepped forward, his Haki flaring red-black around him. Nobody's surrendering anything. Those vials belong to the people you stole them from, and we're taking them back. And we're definitely not letting you extract our Haki, Usopp added with surprising firmness. Kuroshi sighed, as if genuinely disappointed. Then you leave me no choice. He raised his sword again, channeling even more power through its modified blade. This time, the energy that gathered was so intense it distorted the air around him, creating a visible heat haze effect. Everyone, Luffy called to his crew, remember the temple. Resonance. Understanding immediately, the Straw Hats moved into a formation similar to the one they'd practiced at the Temple of Resonance. Despite being on a ship rather than the specialized platform, they could feel those same connections forming between them, their Haki harmonizing into something greater than its individual parts. As Kuroshi brought his sword down to unleash his attack, the Straw Hats released their combined Haki in a perfect counterwave. The two forces met in the middle of the deck with a thunderous impact that shook the entire ship. For a moment, it seemed like a stalemate, the Admiral's amber energy pushing against the multicolored blend of the Straw Hats' harmonized Haki. But then, something unexpected happened. The amber vials that Robin and the others had rescued began to resonate with the Straw Hats' energy. One by one, they started to glow brighter, responding to the harmonized Haki as if recognizing something familiar and welcoming. What's happening? Nami asked, watching the vials pulse with increasing intensity. The extracted Haki, Chopper realized. It's trying to join our resonance. Kuroshi saw it too, his glowing eye widening with alarm. No. Contain those immediately. But it was too late. The first vial shattered, releasing a stream of amber energy that flowed not toward the Straw Hats, but toward one of the vacant-eyed prisoners who had been brought to the deck during the chaos. The moment the energy made contact, the prisoner gasped, color returning to their face as awareness flooded back into their eyes. It's returning to its rightful owner. Robin exclaimed. One by one, the vials began to crack and release their contents, each stream of energy finding its way back to its original source. The previously empty-eyed victims began to revive, confusion giving way to understanding and then to anger as they realized what had been done to them. No. Kuroshi shouted, genuine fear in his voice. You don't understand what you're doing. Uncontrolled release could trigger a cascade effect. The ship began to shake more violently as the competing Haki energies created instability. The sea around them churned and roiled, responding to the massive discharge of willpower. "We need to get off this ship," Jinbe warned. "It's becoming dangerously unstable." Luffy nodded, then turned to the recently revived prisoners. "Come with us if you want to be free." As the Straw Hats began to evacuate, bringing the former captives with them, Kuroshi made one last desperate attempt to stop them. He channeled everything he had left into his sword, creating a barrier of amber energy to block their escape. "I cannot let you leave with those vials. The risk is too great." Luffy stepped forward, his expression resolute but not unkind. "The real risk is thinking you can control everyone else's will. That's not how freedom works." With that, he unleashed the purest expression of his liberation Haki yet, not an attack, but a simple statement of truth that manifested as red-black lightning striking through Kuroshi's barrier like it wasn't even there. The Admiral staggered back, his glowing eye flickering as his sword cracked under the pressure of conflicting energies. "You've lost, Glowy Eye," Luffy said. "Let it go before you get hurt." For a moment, it seemed Kuroshi might continue fighting. But then his sword shattered completely, the technological components overloaded by the competing Haki frequencies. The Admiral fell to his knees, his glowing eye dimming to a normal amber color. "You have no idea what you've done," he whispered, but made no move to pursue as the Straw Hats and the freed prisoners evacuated the increasingly unstable ship. Back on the island of Will, the entity awaited them at the Temple of Resonance. When it saw the revived former prisoners, its expression brightened with surprise and hope. "You managed to restore them," it said, examining one of the few remaining amber vials with wonder. "I didn't think that was possible once extraction was complete." "It wasn't us," Chopper explained. "When we achieved Haki resonance against Kuroshi, the stolen Haki responded and found its way back to its owners." "Remarkable," the entity murmured. "The natural harmony of will seeking its rightful place." The freed prisoners, though confused and disoriented, expressed profound gratitude to the Straw Hats. Many had been captives for years, their identities and powers stripped away by the world government's secret program. "What will happen to them now?" Nami asked the entity, watching as Chopper and the others tended to the former captives. "They must relearn how to use their abilities, just as you have been doing," the entity replied. "The island will welcome them for as long as necessary." "And what about the Marines?" Usopp asked nervously. "Won't they come back with reinforcements?" The entity's expression grew thoughtful. "Perhaps. But I believe Admiral Kuroshi has learned an important lesson today, one that may cause him to reconsider his approach." "Fat chance," Zoro scoffed. He seemed pretty committed to his Sovereign Dawn project. "Fear often masquerades as conviction," the entity observed. Beneath his certainty lay terror of experiencing again the catastrophe that claimed his home. Now that he has seen Haki resonance used constructively rather than destructively, a seed of doubt has been planted. "Speaking of constructive use," Robin interjected, "there's still much we don't understand about our new abilities. Our training was interrupted." "Indeed," the entity agreed. "And there is still the matter of the true purpose of Conqueror's Haki, what the ancient kingdom called sovereign will." "Which is?" Jinbe prompted. The entity smiled enigmatically. "That is for your final lesson. But not tonight. You have all earned rest after your ordeal." As night fell over the island of Will, the Straw Hats found themselves reflecting on how much had changed in just a single day. Their understanding of Haki had been transformed, their abilities had evolved beyond what they'd thought possible, and their bonds as a crew had deepened in ways that transcended ordinary friendship. "Hey," Luffy said as they sat around a campfire near the temple, "does anyone else feel different? Not just stronger, but more connected?" "I was just thinking the same thing," Nami admitted. "It's like I can still feel echoes of your perceptions even though the resonance ended." "The pathways remain," the entity explained, joining their circle. "Once formed, they never truly disappear." With practice, you'll be able to access them at will, sharing strengths and insights as needed. So we're stuck with Luffy's thoughts in our heads forever? Sanji groaned dramatically. Just endless loops of meet, adventure, meet all day long. Everyone laughed, including Luffy himself. Hey, at least it's better than Zoro's train, sleep, train, get lost routine. As the banter continued, Robin observed the entity with curious eyes. You seem pleased with our progress, despite the complications with the Marines. I am, it acknowledged. For centuries, I have guarded the knowledge of this island, waiting for those who might truly understand its purpose. Your crew has grasped in days what took the ancients years to comprehend, that true power comes not from domination, but from harmony. Is that why every Straw Hat having Conqueror's Haki freaked everyone out so much? Usopp asked. Because they think it's supposed to be about conquering others? Precisely. The world government has perpetuated that misunderstanding deliberately, telling people that Conqueror's Haki marks one as having the qualities of a king specifically to reinforce hierarchical thinking. When really, it's about conquering limitations, Chopper said thoughtfully. Both in ourselves and in the world around us. The entity nodded approvingly. Tomorrow, you will learn the final truth about what the ancients called sovereign will, and why your crew manifesting it simultaneously represents both the greatest hope and the greatest threat to the world order established after the Void Century. As the Straw Hats drifted toward sleep, physically exhausted but spiritually invigorated, the entity gazed up at the stars with an expression of cautious optimism. The wheel of history turns, it whispered, echoing its earlier words. But perhaps this time, toward liberation rather than destruction. On the distant horizon, barely visible from the island's highest point, Admiral Kuroshi's damaged ship limped away toward Marine headquarters. The Admiral stood at the stern, his formerly glowing eye now normal but fixed on the invisible island behind them. Captain Vare, he said quietly to his first officer, I want all records of today's events classified at the highest level. No report to the 5 elders yet. Sir. Vare questioned, surprised. Protocol requires immediate, I'm aware of protocol, Kuroshi interrupted. But I need time to reconsider certain assumptions. About the Straw Hats. About everything. The Admiral touched the cracked technology that had once made his eye glow. 20 years believing one truth, only to glimpse another possibility today. I need time to process what I've witnessed. As the Marine ship disappeared over the horizon, the island of Will continued its silent vigil, the Temple of Resonance glowing softly in the moonlight as it had for centuries, waiting for those with the will to understand its final, world-changing secret. Chapter 3, Conquest. Dawn broke over the island of Will, bathing the Temple of Resonance in golden light. The Straw Hats had slept soundly despite the previous day's chaos, their bodies and spirits rejuvenated by the island's unique energy. Luffy woke first, stretching his rubber limbs toward the sky with a satisfied groan. Man, I'm starving. Hey Sanji, what's for breakfast? The cook was already up, preparing a meal using the ancient kitchen facilities near the temple. His hands moved with practiced efficiency as golden black Haki flowed into the food he prepared. Almost ready, he called back. Special energy restoration menu coming up. The others stirred one by one, each feeling remarkably refreshed considering the battles they'd fought. The former prisoners they'd rescued were gathered nearby, many of them still adjusting to having their Haki, their very will, restored after months or years of emptiness. How's everyone doing? Chopper asked, checking on a woman who had been one of the longest-held captives. Better, she replied, her eyes clearer than they had been the night before. It's like waking up from a nightmare where I couldn't move or speak. Everything feels more real now. As they ate Sanji's rejuvenating breakfast, the entity that had been their guide appeared, its form shifting slightly in the morning light to become more defined, more present. Today, it announced, you will learn the final truth about what the ancient kingdom called sovereign will, and why your crew possessing it simultaneously is so significant. Robin set down her cup, her eyes sharp with interest. Does this connect to the Void Century? to the history the world government has tried to erase. It is at the very heart of that erasure, the entity confirmed. The ancient kingdom's understanding of Haki, particularly what you call Conqueror's Haki, was the primary reason for their destruction. This statement silenced even Luffy, who paused mid-bite. "Follow me," the entity said, "to the Chamber of Echoes. There, you will see the truth for yourselves." The Chamber of Echoes lay deep beneath the central spire, accessible only through a narrow passageway that spiraled downward into the earth. As the Straw Hats descended, they noticed inscriptions on the walls, a script similar to that on poneglyphs but older, more primal somehow. "I can read parts of this," Robin said, her fingers tracing the symbols. "It's an ancestral form of the language used on the poneglyphs. It speaks of the awakening, the resonance, and the liberation. The 3 stages of sovereign will mastery in the ancient kingdom," the entity explained. "What you've experienced over the past 2 days." The chamber itself was vast and circular, its walls embedded with what appeared to be amber crystals similar to the vials they'd seen on the marine ship. At the center stood a crystalline structure that pulsed with the same energy as the central pillar of light above. "This," the entity said, "is the Chamber of Memory. Here, the ancient kingdom preserved their knowledge and history through Haki imprints, memories and experiences encoded directly into these crystals. Like recording dials?" Usopp asked, examining one of the amber formations with curiosity. "Far more sophisticated. These contain not just sounds or images, but complete sensory experiences, thoughts, feelings, knowledge, all preserved perfectly across millennia." The entity approached the central crystal structure and placed its hand upon it. Immediately, the chamber transformed around them. The stone walls seemed to fade away, replaced by visions of a vast, advanced civilization unlike anything they'd seen before. Cities with impossible architecture that seemed to blend harmoniously with nature. People of all races living together, their daily lives infused with Haki techniques that enhanced everything from construction to art to healing. No clear rulers or hierarchy, but rather communities functioning through cooperation and resonance. "The ancient kingdom," Robin whispered in awe. "Just as I imagined it might be." "They called themselves Harmonia," the entity corrected. "And what you see is a society built upon the principles of sovereign will, what you know as Conqueror's Haki." The vision shifted, showing people gathering in circular formations reminiscent of the Temple of Resonance. Their Haki manifested visibly around them in different colors and patterns, but instead of using it for combat, they combined their energies to accomplish remarkable feats, healing devastated landscapes, calming natural disasters, creating works of art and architecture that would be impossible through normal means. In Harmonia, sovereign will was cultivated in all citizens, the entity explained as the images flowed around them. Not as a tool of domination, but as a means of harmonizing individual desires with collective well-being. They believed every person had the right to self-determination, to be sovereign over their own life while contributing to the greater harmony. "That's beautiful," Nami said softly. "And threatening to those who desired control over others," the entity added, its tone darkening as the visions shifted. Now they saw armadas of ships bearing unfamiliar flags, led by 20 figures whose arrogance was evident even across the centuries. The 20 kings, Jinbe recognized immediately. The founders of the world government. Yes. They were warlords and tyrants from nations that rejected Harmonia's principles. They believed hierarchy was the natural order, that some were born to rule and others to serve. Sovereign will, with its emphasis on individual freedom within collective harmony, was anathema to them. The visions showed warfare, but unlike any they had witnessed before. The forces of Harmonia didn't fight with traditional weapons, but with Haki techniques that sought to disable rather than destroy. Their opponents, however, showed no such restraint. Despite their advanced understanding of Haki, Harmonia was not a warlike civilization, the entity continued. They were unprepared for the brutality of those who sought their destruction. So they lost, Zoro concluded, watching as the beautiful cities began to fall. Not initially. For many years, the war remained at a stalemate. Harmonia's sovereign will users were powerful enough to defend their territories without resorting to the same level of violence as their attackers. The visions shifted again, showing a council meeting within Harmonia where debate raged between different factions. The turning point came when some within Harmonia argued that they should use their Haki offensively, to impose their will upon their attackers as the attackers sought to impose upon them. Fighting fire with fire, Frankie observed. Exactly. This fundamental disagreement split their leadership. Some maintained that using sovereign will to dominate others, even enemies, would corrupt its very purpose. Others argued that temporary domination was necessary to preserve their way of life. They watched as the debate grew more heated, the factions more divided. And then came a moment that sent chills through all who witnessed it. A leader of one faction, his patience finally exhausted, unleashed his Haki in anger against his opponents. The black lightning erupted not as the controlled manifestation they had learned to harness, but as a storm of raw, unchecked will. The first perversion of sovereign will, the entity said quietly. The moment when harmony was replaced by dominance. The consequences played out before them in horrifying detail. The unleashed Haki didn't just affect the intended targets but spread like a contagion, amplified by the resonance chambers and networks that Harmonia had built to share Haki constructively. A cascade effect that tore through the central city, overwhelming everything in its path. This is what Admiral Kuroshi witnessed, Robin realized. Not the original event, but something similar, a Conqueror's Haki user losing control. Yes. Throughout history, there have been incidents where those with partial knowledge or training lost control of their sovereign will with devastating results. What you're seeing is the first and most catastrophic. They watched as the 20 kings seized the opportunity created by this internal calamity, launching their final assault against a weakened and divided Harmonia. The fall came swiftly after that, city by city, island by island, until only scattered remnants remained. In the aftermath, the 20 kings didn't just conquer Harmonia, they sought to erase its very existence from history. The entity continued as the visions showed books burning, monuments falling, and people being hunted down. They feared that if knowledge of sovereign will's true nature spread, their authority would forever be at risk. So they created the Void Century, Robin said, pieces finally fitting together in her mind. 100 years erased, and with it, the understanding that Conqueror's Haki isn't about conquering others at all. Precisely. They rewrote the narrative, declaring that Conqueror's Haki was the mark of those born to rule, a rare gift granted only to those with the qualities of a king. By making it seem exclusive and inherently hierarchical, they transformed a tool of harmony into a symbol of domination. The visions faded, leaving the straw hat standing once more in the physical chamber of echoes, though the emotional impact of what they'd witnessed remained. This is what we've been participating in without knowing it, Jinbi said gravely. A perversion of Haki's true purpose. But we can change that, Luffy said, his voice unusually serious. Now that we know the truth. The entity nodded. That is why your crew represents such a threat to the world government. Not merely because you all possess Conqueror's Haki, though that alone would alarm them, but because you're rediscovering its true purpose through your natural harmony with one another. So what happens now? Chopper asked. What's the final stage of our training? Liberation, the entity replied. The ultimate expression of sovereign will is not conquest over others, but liberation, freeing yourself and those around you from imposed limitations, both external and internal. That sounds right up our alley, Usopp grinned. Breaking rules is pretty much our specialty. There's more at stake than you might realize, the entity cautioned. The knowledge you've gained, combined with your growing mastery, makes you targets not just for the Marines but for darker forces that serve the Five Elders directly. The Haki Hunters, Sanji recalled. They're not just random bounty hunters, are they? No. They are the modern incarnation of the force that helped the 20 kings hunt down Harmonia's survivors, a specialized unit dedicated to capturing, suppressing, or eliminating sovereign will users who might threaten the established order. And now they're after us, Nami concluded. With renewed urgency, yes. The moment all of you manifested Conqueror's Haki simultaneously, you triggered monitoring systems the world government has maintained for centuries. Even now, they are mobilizing forces beyond the usual Marines. As if to confirm this warning, a tremendous boom echoed from above, shaking dust from the chamber ceiling. What was that? Brooke exclaimed. The entity's expression turned grave. They've found us. The Haki hunters have arrived in force, and it appears Admiral Kuroshi has returned as well, with significant reinforcements. On the surface, the situation was dire. 3 massive battleships had taken position around the island, their cannons targeting the central spire. Unlike standard marine vessels, these ships bore a different insignia, a purple eye surrounded by 13 stars. CP-0, Robin identified immediately, her face paling at the sight. The world government's strongest intelligence agency. Admiral Kuroshi stood on the lead ship's deck, but he wasn't alone. Beside him stood 5 figures in elaborate masks and specialized combat gear, the elite of the Haki hunters, known as the Sovereign Suppressors. Last chance, straw hats. Kuroshi's voice boomed across the island through a den mushy projection system. Surrender yourselves and the knowledge you've gained, or we will have no choice but to eliminate this island and everyone on it from history itself. The straw hats emerged from the underground chamber to assess the situation, gathering at the Temple of Resonance where they could see all 3 battleships surrounding them. They're not bluffing, Jinbi said grimly. Those ships carry Buster Call-level firepower. And those masked guys give me the creeps, Usopp added, peering through his sniper goggles. They've got some kind of advanced suppression devices, way more sophisticated than what we faced yesterday. The entity joined them, its form shifting anxiously. The suppressors are the world government's ultimate anti-Haki force. Each is specially trained and equipped to counter specific aspects of sovereign will. Together, they've eliminated countless potential threats over the centuries. So what's the plan? Zoro asked, his hand resting on his swords. We can't exactly fight our way out against that kind of firepower. Luffy stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the lead battleship. We don't have to fight. We just need to show them the truth. What do you mean? Nami asked. If what we learned down there is right, then Conqueror's Haki, sovereign will, isn't about knocking people out or making them obey. It's about harmony and freedom. Luffy turned to his crew, his expression unusually thoughtful. So let's show them what that really looks like. The Liberation Resonance, the entity said with sudden understanding. Yes, it might work, if you've truly grasped the essence of your training. What exactly is the Liberation Resonance? Robin asked. The highest expression of sovereign will is practiced in Harmonia. Not a weapon or attack, but a harmonization so perfect it can reveal truth and dissolve deception. It doesn't force others to see, but rather removes the barriers that prevent them from seeing for themselves. Luffy nodded decisively. That's what we'll do. We'll show everyone, the Marines, the Hunters, even Glowy Eye, what Conqueror's Haki is really supposed to be. It won't be easy, the entity warned. The resonance requires perfect harmony among all participants, and the suppressors will do everything in their power to prevent you from achieving it. Then we'll protect the others while they prepare, Jinbe volunteered, stepping forward with Zoro and Sanji. Yeah, you'll need time to set up, Zoro agreed. We'll buy you that time. I'll handle their ships, Frankie added, activating several new modifications to his mechanical body that he developed through his Haki training. Keep them busy while you guys do your thing. Luffy looked at each of his nakama, a surge of pride warming his chest. All right. Jinbe, Zoro, Sanji, and Frankie will keep them busy. The rest of us will set up the Liberation Resonance. Let's show these guys what the future Pirate King's crew can really do. As they prepared to implement their plan, another announcement came from the battleships. We have detected movement, Kuroshi's voice declared. You have 30 seconds to indicate surrender before we open fire. That's not much time, Usopp gulped. Then we better not waste it, Luffy replied with his characteristic grin. Let's go. The initial assault came with overwhelming force. All three battleships opened fire simultaneously, their cannons launching not standard cannonballs but specialized ammunition designed to disrupt Haki, shells that exploded into clouds of the same purple substance the Haki hunters had used in their first encounter. Jinbe met this barrage head-on, his blue-black Haki flowing through the sea itself. Massive columns of water rose at his command, intercepting the shells mid-flight and containing their explosions in swirling aquatic spheres. Fishman Karate, Ocean Current Containment. Meanwhile, Frankie activated his most ambitious Haki-infused invention yet, a set of mechanical wings that erupted from his back, carrying him skyward in a burst of blue-black energy. Super Airspace Denial System activated. The wings weren't just for flight, they housed dozens of precision countermeasures that locked onto incoming projectiles with unerring accuracy. Beams of focused Haki energy shot from Frankie's modified arms, detonating the shells safely above the island. On the ground, Zoro and Sanji prepared to intercept the landing parties already being deployed from all three ships, small, fast assault craft carrying Haki hunters and CP-0 operatives toward the shore. Try not to get in my way, Cook, Zoro said with a smirk as he drew his swords, green-black energy flowing through them. Just keep up, Mosshead, Sanji retorted, golden-black flames already dancing around his legs. The first wave of attackers reached the shore, led by two of the masked suppressors. One wore a crimson mask with silver trim, wielding twin batons that crackled with disruptive energy. The other's mask was midnight blue, their hands covered in gauntlets that seemed to absorb light itself. Crimson is mine, Zoro declared, stepping forward to meet the first suppressor. Fine by me, Sanji replied, his eyes fixed on Blue Mask. I needed a warm-up anyway. The clashes were immediate and intense. Crimson Mask moved with extraordinary speed, their batons designed specifically to disrupt the connection between swordsman and sword. Each time they struck one of Zoro's blades, the green-black energy flickered momentarily. Your inherited will technique is impressive, Crimson Mask commented, voice distorted by their mask. But ultimately futile. We've studied every form of Conqueror's Haki for centuries. Zoro didn't waste breath on reply, instead focusing on the harmony he'd achieved with his swords. Rather than fighting the disruption, he incorporated it, letting the energy flow and reform each time it was struck, like water around stones. Three-sword style, flowing dragon river. The attack that followed wasn't a single strike but a continuous motion, his three swords moving in perfect harmony to create a dragon-shaped current of green-black energy that flowed around Crimson Mask's defenses rather than trying to overpower them. Meanwhile, Sanji found himself engaged in an equally challenging battle. Blue Mask's gauntlets absorbed the heat from his flames, attempting to leave him with just physical strikes. Your nourishment Haki is fascinating, Blue Mask observed clinically. But ultimately just another form of energy we can absorb and repurpose. Sanji smiled. You think so? Then absorb this. Instead of attacking directly, Sanji channeled his Haki into the ground beneath them. Golden-black energy spread outward, transforming the very battlefield itself. Recipe for victory, enriched terrain. The soil and plants around them suddenly pulsed with vitality, responding to Sanji's will by growing, shifting, becoming extensions of his intent. Blue Mask found themselves struggling against vegetation that seemed alive and responsive, while the ground beneath their feet became either soft or firm exactly when it would most disadvantage them. Impossible, Blue Mask gasped. You're extending your Haki through the environment itself. Like I said, Sanji replied, appearing suddenly behind his opponent with a perfectly timed kick, absorb this. While these battles raged at the perimeter, Luffy led the others to the Temple of Resonance, where they would attempt the liberation technique. The entity guided them into position around the central platform where the pillar of light rose skyward. The formation is critical, it explained hurriedly. Each of you must stand at the position that best complements the others. Like we did yesterday? Nami asked, taking her place. Similar, but more precise. Yesterday was a basic resonance, this is the ultimate expression of harmonized will. As they moved into position, Luffy, Robin, Nami, Usopp, Chopper, and Brook at 6 equidistant points around the circle, another explosion rocked the island. Above them, they could see Frankie engaged with airborne attackers, his mechanical wings leaving trails of blue light across the sky as he intercepted incoming threats. "We need to hurry," Robin urged, her eyes on the horizon where more ships were appearing, regular marine vessels joining the CP-0 battleships. "Focus inward," the entity instructed. "Each of you must contribute your unique aspect of sovereign will to the whole." They closed their eyes, centering themselves as they'd practiced, feeling for the connections between them. Slowly, their individual Haki manifestations became visible, Luffy's red-black lightning of liberation, Robin's purple-black wings of truth perception, Nami's orange-gold weather currents, Usopp's yellow-green visions of possibility, Chopper's pink-black transcendence, and Brook's cyan-black boundary crossing. "Now, reach deeper," the entity guided. "Beyond technique, beyond application, to the pure essence of your will. What drives you? What is your truest desire?" As they reached this deeper level, something remarkable happened. The colors of their Haki began to blend at the edges, creating a rainbow effect where they overlapped. The central pillar of light pulsed in response, its energy harmonizing with their combined will. "Almost there," the entity encouraged. "Now, direct your collective will not outward as an attack, but upward as an invitation." This instruction wasn't immediately clear, but Luffy understood instinctively. "Like this," he said, shifting his energy from a defensive posture to an open, welcoming configuration. The others followed his example, and the effect was immediate. Their combined Haki rose upward in a spiral around the central pillar, creating a beacon of multicolored light visible for miles. Admiral Kuroshi saw it from the deck of his flagship, his formerly glowing eye widening in recognition. "The liberation resonance," he whispered. "I thought it was just a legend." The sovereign suppressors tensed around him, their masks turning toward the rising spiral of light. "Orders, Admiral," the leader asked, their mask, pure white with black tears, gleaming in the strange light. Kuroshi hesitated, memories from 20 years ago competing with newer ones from just the day before, the Straw Hats using their Haki not to destroy, but to restore. "Proceed as planned," he finally ordered, though his voice lacked its usual conviction. "Stop them before the resonance completes." White Mask nodded, then gestured to the 2 remaining suppressors who hadn't yet deployed. "Green and Yellow, terminate the resonance. Use final protocols if necessary." The 2 masked figures, one in jade green, the other in amber yellow, bowed in acknowledgement before leaping from the ship with inhuman speed, heading directly for the Temple of Resonance. Jinbe sensed the new threat first, his perception extended through the water around the island. "2 more suppressors incoming," he shouted toward the temple. "Highly dangerous." Zoro, having finally gained the upper hand against Crimson Mask, looked toward the new threat. "Go help at the temple," he called to Jinbe. "I'll finish up here." Jinbe nodded, summoning a massive wave to carry him rapidly toward the temple. As he rode the crest, he saw the 2 new suppressors already nearing their target, moving with such speed they seemed to blur. Green Mask carried what appeared to be a staff topped with a crystalline orb, while Yellow Mask wielded no visible weapons but moved with a fluid grace that suggested mastery of martial arts. Water Shot Barrage. Jinbe launched a series of precision water projectiles, forcing the suppressors to dodge and momentarily slowing their advance. This gave him just enough time to reach the temple and take position between the attackers and his resonating crewmates. "You shall not pass," he stated simply, his stance wide and unshakable. The suppressors didn't waste time on words. They attacked in perfect coordination, Green Mask staff extending unexpectedly to strike from multiple angles simultaneously, while Yellow Mask circled to attack from behind. Jinbe met their assault with the calm resilience that characterized his Haki. His blue-black energy didn't flare dramatically like some of his crewmates, instead, it flowed like the ocean itself, yielding where necessary, then surging forward with unstoppable momentum. Fishman Karate, Tide of Harmonization. The technique wasn't primarily offensive, but defensive, creating currents of Haki-infused water that surrounded the resonating straw hats like a protective barrier. When green and yellow masks struck this barrier, their attacks didn't bounce off but were gradually redirected, their momentum preserved but their direction altered to flow harmlessly away from their intended targets. Most impressive, Green Mask commented, adjusting their grip on the staff. But ultimately futile. The crystalline orb at the top of their staff began to pulse with sickly green light. When they slammed it into Jinbe's water barrier, instead of being redirected, the energy from the orb began to corrupt the water itself, turning it purple and caustic. Sovereign Suppression Technique, Harmony Corruption, Green Mask intoned. Your balance is impressive, Jinbe of the Sea, but all balance can be disrupted. Jinbe grimaced as he felt his Haki being tainted, the harmonious currents he'd established becoming chaotic and conflicted. Behind him, the resonating straw hats faltered slightly, their perfect formation wavering as the corruption threatened to spread to them as well. Could use some help here, Jinbe called out, struggling to maintain his defense. His call was answered from an unexpected direction. One of the former prisoners they'd rescued, a tall woman with silver hair who had been observing quietly until now, stepped forward. "Allow me," she said, her voice carrying an authority that belied her recent imprisonment. With a gesture that spoke of years of training, she manifested her own Haki, silver-white energy that flowed like quicksilver. When it touched Jinbe's corrupted water barrier, the purple taint receded, harmony restored. "Impossible," Yellow Mask hissed. "You're one of the extracted subjects. Your Haki cannot have recovered so quickly." The silver-haired woman smiled coldly. "You underestimate the resilience of the human spirit. And you never bothered to ask who you were extracting." She drew herself up to her full height, her silver Haki forming into patterns that seemed vaguely familiar to those with knowledge of history. "I am Sylvia D. Harmonia, last direct descendant of the ancient kingdom's sovereign council. And you are trespassing on sacred ground." This revelation stunned even the suppressors momentarily. Green Mask recovered first, swinging their staff toward this new threat. "D-clan or not, you're outnumbered and outmatched." "Am I?" Sylvia replied calmly. Around her, the other former prisoners had begun to gather, their recently restored Haki manifesting in various colors and patterns. Though still weak from their ordeal, together they created a secondary resonance that reinforced Jinbe's defenses. "You stole our will," one of them said, a young man whose green Haki spiraled like vines. "You won't like what happens when we take it back." Jinbe nodded gratefully to Sylvia and the others. "Protect the inner circle. I'll handle these two." With the corrupting influence neutralized by Sylvia's intervention, Jinbe could now focus fully on the suppressors themselves. His Haki surged with renewed strength, drawing power from the sea around the island. Fishman Karate Ultimate Technique, Ocean Sovereignty. The water around the entire temple responded to his will, rising to form not just a barrier but a dynamic environment that he controlled completely. Within this domain, Jinbe's perception and influence were absolute, every droplet an extension of his will. Green and Yellow Mask found their mobility severely compromised, their specialized techniques countered by the omnipresent water that anticipated their movements before they made them. "This is the true meaning of Conqueror's Haki," Jinbe told them as the water closed in. "Not dominating others, but achieving such perfect harmony with one's element that mastery becomes effortless." The suppressors fought valiantly but were eventually overwhelmed by the combination of Jinbe's ocean sovereignty and the supporting Haki of Sylvia and the other former prisoners. As they were finally subdued, bound in currents of water they couldn't escape, Jinbe turned his attention back to his resonating crewmates. The spiral of multicolored light had continued to build during the battle, now reaching so high it disappeared into the clouds above. Within the circle, Luffy and the others maintained their focus, their combined will creating something that hadn't been seen in the world for over 800 years. "It's working," Sylvia said with wonder in her voice. "The liberation resonance, just as described in our oldest traditions." "What exactly will it do?" Jinbi asked, maintaining his water prison around the captured suppressors. It doesn't force anything, she explained. Rather, it removes veils of deception, allows people to see truth they've been blocked from recognizing, including truths about themselves. As she spoke, the spiral of light reached its zenith, and something remarkable happened. The energy collapsed inward, concentrating into an impossibly bright point at the center of the circle, then exploded outward in a wave of multicolored light that expanded in all directions. Unlike a shock wave, this pulse passed through solid objects without disturbing them physically. When it washed over Jinbi, he experienced a moment of profound clarity, seeing connections and patterns he'd always sensed but never fully comprehended. The history of Fishman Island, his own journey, the currents of conflict and reconciliation that had shaped his life, all suddenly made perfect sense as parts of a larger harmony. The wave continued outward, passing over the entire island and beyond, reaching the battleships and even the distant marine vessels still approaching. Admiral Kuroshi was prepared for many things: attacks, defenses, even conventional Conqueror's Haki. But nothing in his 20 years of hunting Haki users had prepared him for the wave of clarity that washed over his flagship. When it touched him, his hand went instinctively to his damaged eye, the one that had once glowed with amber light. The cybernetic components that had allowed him to track and suppress Haki fell away, revealing a normal eye beneath, scarred but functional. And with it, the walls in his mind began to crumble. He saw his past clearly for the first time in decades, not just the destruction of his home island, but what had led to it. The world government experiments conducted there in secret. The captured Conqueror's Haki user who had been tortured and pushed beyond endurance until his will exploded outward in a catastrophic release. The convenient elimination of all witnesses except for one promising young Marine who could be molded into a weapon against similar threats. It was never about preventing another tragedy, he whispered, staggering against the railing as the full weight of manipulation crashed down upon him. It was about controlling the power. Around him, similar revelations seemed to be striking others. Marines looked at each other in confusion. The remaining suppressors froze in their tracks. Even the CP-0 agents appeared momentarily disoriented as the wave of clarity forced them to confront truths they had buried or never known. Admiral. Captain Vare approached cautiously, her own expression troubled. Your orders. Kuroshi stared toward the island, where the multicolored light continued to pulse rhythmically. After 20 years of certainty, of righteous purpose, he found himself adrift in doubt. He began, then stopped, truly unsure for the first time in his career. I need to see for myself what this means. At the Temple of Resonance, the 6 straw hats at the center of the circle slowly opened their eyes, the overwhelming energy of the liberation resonance finally subsiding to manageable levels. They looked at each other with expressions of wonder and new understanding. Did you guys feel that? Luffy asked, his voice unusually soft. Like seeing the whole picture for the first time, Robin confirmed. It was beautiful, Chopper added, tears in his eyes. The entity approached them, its form now more defined than ever, resembling a person of indeterminate gender wearing robes reminiscent of those they'd seen in the visions of Harmonia. You've accomplished something remarkable, it said, pride evident in its voice. A true liberation resonance, not seen in this world since the fall of the ancient kingdom. What exactly did we do? Nami asked, still feeling aftershocks of the profound clarity that had washed through her. You created a field of truth, not by forcing others to see what you believe, but by temporarily removing the barriers that prevent people from seeing clearly for themselves. So everyone who got hit by that wave, Usopp began, is experiencing a moment of profound clarity about themselves and the world around them, the entity confirmed. What they do with that clarity is, of course, their choice, free will remains intact. But deceptions, both external and self-imposed, are momentarily stripped away. Brook chuckled softly. That explains why I suddenly understand melodies I've been struggling with for decades. The barriers between intuition and consciousness removed, yo-ho-ho-ho. The effect was spreading far beyond the island. In the distance, they could see the Marine and CP-0 ships in disarray, their coordinated attack formation broken as individuals aboard processed their personal revelations. It won't last forever, the entity cautioned. For most, the clarity will fade as daily concerns and ingrained patterns reassert themselves. But the experience leaves traces, seeds of awareness that may grow over time. Luffy nodded thoughtfully. That feels right. We can show people the truth, but they've gotta decide what to do with it themselves. Otherwise, we'd just be conquering them in a different way. This insight, so simple yet profound, demonstrated just how much Luffy had grown through this experience. His inherent understanding of freedom had deepened into a more nuanced appreciation for the complexity of true liberation. Zoro and Sanji joined them at the temple, having subdued their opponents. Frankie descended from the sky, his mechanical wings retracting as he landed. "Did we win?" he asked, taking in the strangely peaceful scene. "In a way," Jinbe replied. "Though not through conventional victory." Sylvia stepped forward, addressing all the Straw Hats. "What you've accomplished today goes beyond winning or losing a battle. You've rediscovered what my ancestors hoped would never be forgotten, the true purpose of sovereign will." "Which is?" Zoro prompted. "Harmony," she said simply. "The balance between individual sovereignty and collective well-being. The ancient kingdom wasn't perfect, no civilization is, but they understood that true power comes not from domination, but from resonance." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a small boat at the temple's base. Admiral Kuroshi had come alone, unarmed, his face troubled but determined. "Admiral approaching," Frankie warned, charging his weapons. "Wait," Luffy said, raising a hand. "Let's hear what he has to say." Kuroshi climbed the steps to the temple slowly, his movements lacking their former crisp military precision. When he reached the top, he stopped at a respectful distance from the Straw Hats. "That wave," he said without preamble, "it showed me things. About my past. About what really happened to my island." "The world government used you," Robin said, not unkindly. "They took your tragedy and shaped it into a weapon." "Yes." The admission seemed to cost him something. 20 years of certainty, gone in an instant. "What will you do now?" Luffy asked directly. Kuroshi looked around at the temple, at the former prisoners, at the entity, and finally at the Straw Hats themselves. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I cannot in good conscience continue my previous mission." He removed his admiral's coat, folding it carefully. "Consider this my resignation from that particular duty." "And your forces?" Jinbe inquired, gesturing toward the ships. In disarray, questioning orders they previously followed without thought. The wave affected everyone differently, but none were left untouched. A ghost of a smile crossed Kuroshi's face. The suppressors in particular seemed to be having existential crises. "They would," Sylvia commented. "Their entire identity was built around preventing others from achieving what they themselves were capable of." Kuroshi turned to her, recognition dawning. "You're one of the D clan." "I am," she acknowledged. "Perhaps the last who knew their connection to Harmonia." The admiral seemed about to say more when another tremor shook the island, different from the previous explosions, deeper somehow. The entity's expression became alarmed. "The liberation resonance, it's affected the island itself. The ancient mechanisms are reactivating." "Is that bad?" Chopper asked. "Not bad, but significant. This island was designed to do more than preserve knowledge. In times of great need, it was meant to rise fully into the world again." As if responding to these words, the ground beneath them shifted. The entire spire upon which the Temple of Resonance stood began to rise higher, and other spires across the island followed suit. From beneath the water surrounding the island, new structures emerged, buildings, bridges, and plazas that had been submerged for centuries. "The hidden city," Robin breathed in awe. "It's revealing itself." "Not just a city," the entity corrected, its form growing more substantial with each passing moment. A beacon. The island of Will was created as Harmonia fell, designed to preserve their knowledge and reintroduce it to the world when the time was right. And that time is now? Sanji asked. It appears so. Your combined will has satisfied the conditions set by the island's creators. As the island continued its transformation, emerging fully from the sea in its complete form, a new wave of energy pulsed from the central pillar, not the clarity wave of before, but something different. Information, pure and direct, flowed into the minds of all present, history, techniques, understanding that would have taken years to convey through conventional means. The sovereign archives, Sylvia said with reverent awe. The complete knowledge of Harmonia, preserved perfectly after all these centuries. For the Straw Hats, this influx of information brought their training to completion. Techniques they had glimpsed during their short training suddenly made complete sense. Applications they hadn't even considered became obvious. The full potential of their unique expressions of sovereign will unfolded in their consciousness. This is incredible, Usopp marveled, watching as his yellow-green Haki formed complex patterns he now inherently understood. I could spend a lifetime exploring what's possible. That's exactly what the world government feared, Kuroshi observed quietly. Not just power, but understanding beyond their control. The entity, now fully materialized as a person in ancient robes, nodded in agreement. Knowledge is the ultimate liberation. That's why they worked so hard to erase it. As the island completed its transformation, it became clear that what had appeared to be a small, uncharted island was in fact the tip of something much larger and more significant, a city-sized structure that combined natural and constructed elements in harmonious balance. What happens now? Nami asked, taking in the breathtaking vista of the fully revealed island of Will, now more appropriately called the City of Harmonia. That, the entity replied, is up to you. In the days that followed, word of what had occurred spread rapidly throughout the world. The emergence of an ancient city, the revelation of lost history, and most significantly, the wave of clarity that had extended far beyond the immediate vicinity, affecting even Den Mushi transmissions, created ripples that could not be contained. The world government's initial response was predictable: denial, attempts to quarantine information, and preparation for military action. But something unexpected happened: resistance from within their own ranks. Marines and officials who had experienced the clarity wave began questioning orders, some openly, others through subtle sabotage of the official response. Admiral Kuroshi, rather than being arrested for desertion, found himself becoming a reluctant figurehead for those within the system who sought reform. His testimony about the manipulation he had experienced, backed by evidence he had accumulated over years without realizing its significance, created fractures in the world government's carefully maintained facade. The Straw Hats, meanwhile, faced a decision about their own path forward. We could stay, Robin suggested as they gathered in what had once been the Grand Library of Harmonia, now restored to its former glory. There's so much knowledge here, so much history to uncover. But we're pirates, Luffy replied, his hat shadowing his eyes. Our journey isn't about staying in one place, no matter how amazing. Sylvia, who had assumed a leadership role among the former prisoners and others who had begun gathering at the newly revealed city, understood their dilemma. The purpose of Harmonia was never to create a single perfect place, she told them. It was to demonstrate what's possible when people live in harmony with themselves and each other. That example is meant to spread. Like seeds, Usopp said, catching on immediately. Exactly. The knowledge is now restored to the world, what matters is how it's shared and lived. This framing helped clarify the Straw Hats' path. They would continue their journey, but now with a deeper understanding of their abilities and a clearer sense of the world's true history. They would be living examples of what sovereign will could be when used as intended, not for domination, but for liberation and harmony. On the day of their departure, a week after the Liberation Resonance, the restored city of Harmonia was already becoming a gathering point for those seeking knowledge and community. People from across the Grand Line and beyond had begun arriving, some drawn by rumors, others by dreams and intuitions they couldn't explain. You've created something remarkable here, Jinbe observed to Sylvia as they watched new arrivals being welcomed at the harbor. Not created, restored, she corrected gently. And not just me. All of us together, including your crew. The entity, who had finally revealed its name as Merida, one of the original architects of the island of Will, approached with news. The world government has declared this island an illegal territory, they announced. Anyone who visits or resides here is considered an enemy of global peace. Nami rolled her eyes. Was there ever any doubt they would? They've also placed new bounties on all of you, Merida continued, producing the wanted posters that had begun circulating. The Straw Hats gathered around to examine their updated bounties, all significantly increased, with new epithets that reflected their sovereign will abilities: Liberation Emperor, Monkey D. Luffy, Inherited Will, Roronoa Zoro, Weather Sovereign, Nami, Vision Manifester, Usopp, Nourishment Sage, Sanji, Boundary Transcender, Tony Chopper, Truth Perceiver, Nico Robin, Transformation Engineer, Frankie, Harmonic Soul, Brook, Current Balancer, Jinbe. They've labeled you the most dangerous pirate crew in history, Merida noted. The first crew where all members possess Conqueror's Haki. Luffy grinned at this. Good. That means they're taking us seriously. But there's more, Sylvia added. They're calling you Harbingers of the New Dawn, meant as a warning, but many are taking it as a title of hope. New Dawn, Robin repeated thoughtfully. Appropriate, given what we've helped restore to the world. As final preparations for departure were made, Kuroshi approached Luffy on the Thousand Sunny's deck. The former admiral had abandoned his military uniform for simpler clothing, though he still carried himself with disciplined posture. I wanted to thank you, he said without preamble. And to warn you. Thank me for what? Luffy asked. For showing me the truth, even when I was trying to capture or kill you. Kuroshi touched his formerly glowing eye, now normal save for its amber color. 20 years of certainty is a difficult thing to lose, but necessary when that certainty was built on lies. And the warning? Kuroshi's expression darkened. The 5 elders won't stop with declarations and bounties. What you've done, what this island represents, threatens the very foundation of their power. They'll send everything they have against you, including forces even I wasn't aware of until recently. Luffy's response was predictable but sincere. Let them come. We're not afraid. No, I don't imagine you are. A hint of a smile crossed Kuroshi's face. But be cautious nevertheless. You're not just pirates anymore, you're symbols of a truth they've worked for centuries to suppress. As Kuroshi departed, the rest of the crew boarded the ship, ready for whatever adventures awaited them next. Their training complete, their understanding of their abilities transformed, they were indeed a crew unlike any other in the world. Where to, Captain? Nami asked, the log pose on her wrist now supplemented by her own weather-sensing Haki that could perceive currents and patterns far beyond normal navigation tools. Luffy climbed to his favorite spot on Sunny's figurehead, gazing out at the horizon with eager eyes. Wherever the next adventure is. We've got a lot more of the world to see. As the Thousand Sunny set sail from the newly restored city of Harmonia, those gathered at the harbor watched them go with mixed emotions, gratitude for what they had accomplished, concern for the challenges they would face, but most of all, hope for what their journey represented. The Straw Hats themselves felt a newfound confidence that went beyond their increased powers. They had rediscovered something the world had forgotten, that true strength comes not from dominating others, but from the harmony between individual sovereignty and collective resonance. They were still pirates, still adventurers seeking freedom and fulfilling their dreams. But now they carried with them a deeper understanding of what freedom truly meant, not just liberation from external constraints, but harmony with one's deepest self and those one cares about. As the ship disappeared over the horizon, Sylvia stood with Merida at the highest point of the Temple of Resonance, watching the multicolored wake the Sunny left behind, a physical manifestation of the crew's harmonized Haki. Do you think they'll change the world? Merida asked, their form now permanently materialized thanks to the island's full restoration. Sylvia smiled, her silver hair catching the light of the setting sun. I think they already have. The question is whether the world is ready for what comes next. And what is that, exactly? The end of an era built on deception, she replied, her gaze still fixed on the distant ship. And the beginning of one built on truth. In the grand library below them, a new poneglyph had appeared, one that hadn't existed the day before. On its surface, written in the ancient language only a few could read, was a simple message: when 10 sovereign wills unite in perfect harmony, the dawn of truth shall break upon the world once more. The wheel turns. The cycle renews. Harmonia rises again. The age of deception was ending. The age of harmony had begun. And at the center of this momentous shift were 10 pirates who had discovered that the greatest conquest wasn't of kingdoms or treasures, but of the artificial limitations that prevent us from becoming who we truly are. The Straw Hat Pirates sailed on toward new adventures, carrying with them not just the power of Conqueror's Haki, but its true purpose, the harmonization of will that transforms not through force, but through resonance. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.